Thank you.
Welcome to the Simsbury Board of Selectmen meeting for March 11, 2024, and I'm gonna call the meeting to order and we can all rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a sign-in sheet out. Dave, you wanna grab that for me? It didn't work?
There was a reason I showed up.
Oh, thank you.
I delivered.
Oh, no, okay. So I'm gonna, you're on here too. So we start meeting with public audience and we have some people that have signed up on we have a sign-in sheet. We go through the sign-in sheet first and then if there's people that wanna speak, they go next. You have to wait. Oh, I have it. So Jan Lintner's here.
Yes.
Oh, hi Jan, how are you?
I'm good.
You wanna come up? Everybody has 5 minutes and we do hold you to your time, so I'll try to give you a warning. Oh, when did that go over there?
Okay, so I can go like this.
Oh.
Do you need my address or is it on
Yeah.
the sign up?
It's here, but you can state it for the record.
12H Wiggins Farm Drive. And I'm here tonight to advocate on behalf of the Flower Bridge. As its chair and a retired design professional, I've been working with town staff for a couple of years now as we have been working on the documents for the rehabilitation and repainting of the Flower Bridge. I'm aware of the consequences to the bridge if the supplemental appropriations for that work are not approved. Market conditions have not been in our favor. The painting of the bridge has not been done for 30 years. And time has not made our problems go away. It's peeling, pitting, it has metal loss, and it's all too apparent when you walk across the icon of Simsbury. Last year, in a program that the bridge volunteers initiated, we had about 120 senior citizens from towns throughout Connecticut come to the bridge for an interactive presentation on the history of the bridge, the planting of the flowers on the bridge. And then they had a stroll across the historic bridge. And the majority of them stayed for box lunches, which they bought, ate outside, that Fitzgerald's prepared. However, on the stroll across the bridge, the rusting of the trusses, the peeling of the paint all become too apparent. And so right tonight, I am asking you to please keep in the budget so we can at least be on the referendum to have the work completed. The longer it's delayed, the more difficult it is for the bridge members to continue our work. And we want the bridge to last for another 122 years. Please.
Thank you. The next person we have is Christine Winters.
Good evening. My name is Christine Winters and I'm the Executive Director of the Simsbury Housing Authority. And I am here this evening to address you in recommendation for Amber Abul to our Board of Commissioners. We would like to recommend Amber to our board. Amber was our Board of Selectmen liaison for the past 2 years and has engaged with the Housing Authority with passion. She has been involved in many boards in town of Simsbury and has a desire as to how the town moves forward as she is a vested resident. She is honest and hardworking and has worked closely with the Housing Authority in obtaining the ARCA funding for our capital needs, which we greatly all needed. She knows with her knowledge and dedication, we may not have received the amount of funding that we did. She shows true interest in the housing authority and how we are working towards updating our and making our property safe and affordable for seniors and persons with disabilities with limited income. We pride ourselves in the efforts we put forth for our residents, and she recognizes that as well. Since we have worked with her in the past and she has demonstrated her keen sense of attention to detail, we would be honored to have her as a member of our Board of Commissioners. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dave Bush.
Good evening all. First of all, my name is David Bush, 4 Catherine Lane. I am the commissioner or the chairman of the Park and Rec Commission. First of all, Mark, I'd like to welcome you to town. I was here for part of the budget presentation. Thank God I didn't stay the whole day. The fact that you guys were here all day is really, it shows your dedication. So Kevin, Diana, Stephen, and all the way down here, Curtis, welcome. Thank you for your service. It really is appreciated. So as chairman of Park and Rec, we are given a charge. We're only an advisory board, but we're asked as part of our advisory board to do planning, plan for the future, decide or figure out what the town needs are for recreation. And in doing so, we try to be quite proactive and look at all opportunities. And here on this year's budget, I can't really believe I'm standing here over 150 grand when we just spent a couple million on an irrigation system. But part of our charge is to plan. And as part of this plan, we recognize that we have a pool in town that is done. It is costing us money every year to keep Memorial Pool open. Money, you don't spend it like Simsbury Farms. We're losing $10,000 worth of water every year. The pool either needs to be replaced, can you say $3 to $5 million? Or we need to find some other alternative. You might ask, why do we need an alternative? Well, we need an alternative because our town, Tom Taberski and his staff do such a great job with our camps. One of our most profitable and most commonly attended camps is out of Central School, and there's always been a water component. So if you're going to take one amenity away, you must plan for the future and find some replacement. All we're asking for is the funding to do the analysis of what do we need. So as part of the challenges of your job, the competing interests of all the different things, Board of Education and roads, remember, what does bring value to Simsbury? Recreation. Recreation is not a want. In fact, in this case, it's a need. It's a need because Tom generates revenue, more revenue from that camp than any other camp. We also could, from a splash pad, generate revenue. You know, we just spent a lot of money in association with the development of the master plan. We figured out we needed to fix our playgrounds. And as part of fixing the playgrounds, I want you to think of this as the water playground. We had a pool. We're now going to replace it with a water playground. It'll bring an opportunity to all the citizens. It's right next to the ball fields in Central School, can be used by other schools as well. This is not some high in the sky desire that makes no sense. This is a replacement for a building that has been 45, 60 years?
Over 60.
Okay, so that what I would like you to consider is that one of the biggest reasons people move to this town, Simsbury Farms, the pool, tennis courts, we're spending money on pickleball, we're spending money on making sure that we take care of our stewardship obligations. I look at this as part of our stewardship obligation. We're taking away one particular asset, and all we're doing is we're gonna replace it with one now that is a more popular asset, a more recognized need for the younger kids. We have lots of things for the older folks, but we gotta take care of our kids. So please, I know there are competing interests. I really envy the fact that you guys sit here all day long and I had to do yard work, you know. But thank you for your time, thank you for tonight, and please just give us the due consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Is there anyone else here for public audience? I'll let Joan go, Mark.
Joan Sloan, 26 Whitcomb Drive. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting on February 26th, Mike Long, Police Commissioner, refuted my comments about the selection process for the selection of Chief Bolter when Chief Ingridson retired. Mike Long has a history of being a political operative in the Democratic Party for decades. Politics has become a dangerous sport when power and control is paramount to winning. Influence peddling is an integral part of the political sport. Mike Long has served as police commissioner for decades. Mike Long was an attorney for Ensign Bickford for decades when the company controlled almost every aspect of the Simsbury community. Mike Long has a history as a political kingpin. Mike Long was part of the Governor O'Neill's kitchen cabinet, where they met regularly in Governor O'Neill's Tavern in East Haddam. Both Governor O'Neill and Governor Malloy appointed Mike Long to the Bradley International Airport Commission, where he is presently serving. It is alleged that Mike Long's daughter served as an intern in the Clinton White House.
Don't,
Many years ago,
excuse
the
me.
Hartford Advocate had several articles about Mike Long asking state legislators to add a rider to one of the bills to make him a state marshal. After the articles were published, the rider was eliminated from the bills. When Mike Long used his political power to negotiate
Joan,
his
you're
bill.
impugning his motive and integrity and you're
Mike
being
Long-
very rude.
I'm going to the part where he talked about it. Mike Long is a member of the Democratic Down Committee, where the political power is significant. Prior to Chief Ingridson's retirement to the Police Commission, gave a raise of 5% to Chief Ingridson and Captain Bolter outside the regular budget process. Chief Ingridson's raise would increase the value of his retirement benefits, and Captain Bolter's raise was inconsistent with the town policy and questionable. Chief Ingridson recommended that Captain Bolter be promoted to chief. That created many issues with the rank and file officers who did not support the selection. Then there was a need for a political event to validate the selection. There was an outside officer with a Gold Star person who would have applied for the position as chief, but after a whisper campaign to damage the character of the individual, the officer never applied. It appeared that the selection of the panel was window dressing to substantiate the selection of Chief Bolter. Therefore, thereafter, there was a firing of a police officer who is now serving as a state police officer, and several internal activity investigations that were inconclusive. A no confidence vote where the police officer voted is just a signal that the working environment is toxic. Commissioner Long had spent many hours talking to Chief Ingridson and now Chief Bolter, entering the police department with a passcode to open the door to the restricted area. This gave the appearance of special treatment for Mike Long. It appears that Mike Long, after being told to follow the law, requires a front and back license plate on his car, feels that the law does not apply to him. Politics has infiltrated all departments served with taxpayer money, and many of the decisions on policy serve the lobbyists and power brokers. Mike Long enjoys being a political operative. The beat goes on. It appears that the budget developed by the Board of Education in the town are above the guidelines of the Board of Finance. There is presently a push to increase the employees in the assessor's office. The assessor have responsibility to assess property that is fair and equitable. A major part of the revenues derived through assessments. The model can be arbitrary and used aggressively to set values that are punitive in order to increase revenues, to increase the tax base. By placing more employees in the assessor's office, it would be easy to point the blame of increased assessment on staff. Each new position on staff should be justified with conclusive evidence that the benefit derived from the cost will be beneficial to the taxpayers. All the ARPA money used to fund permanent positions should be scrutinized. The boards and commissions that are elected to serve the people should be the gatekeepers for excessive spending. Long-term planning is an essential tool for future expenditures. Since the Board of Education has large fluctuations in their budget due to special education with unknown expenditures, the model of the special education expenditures should be changed to minimize the taxpayers' cost. I would recommend that the special education department become part of a regional expenditure like the health district. The state would supply satellite buildings for special education needs of the students, and each town would contribute, along with the state, to maximize the benefits and minimize the costs. All of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Chat and Twitter at Joan Poe. Thank you for listening.
You gonna top that, Mark? Oopsie.
My name is Mark Ornstein and I've lived at 82 Old Meadow Plain Road for 52 years. I am a Simsbury Community Media Board member and I am here tonight to describe House Bill 5446, which was raised last Wednesday evening by the Legislature's Energy and Technology Committee. There's a public hearing on this bill on Thursday, March 14th. And written comments need to be uploaded to the Energy and Technology Committee by 3 p.m. on March 13th, the day before. House Bill 5446 is titled, "An Act Concerning Funding for Community Access Television, a Connecticut Television Network, and Low-Income Internet Access." Its short description is 1. Extend the gross earnings on tax, cable, and satellite television companies to all communication service providers. 2. Change the method of funding community access television operations. Also, the Public Educational Governmental Programming and Educational Technology Investment Account Grant Program, known as PECPIDIA, and the Connecticut Television Network, CTN. And 3, report on a possible program to support lower income households with broadband internet subscriptions. Technology has drastically changed since cable TV was introduced into Connecticut in the 1980s, and the laws have just not kept up. In the 1990s, both internet access and telephone services were introduced using the same cable as TV. By the mid-2010 decade, cable TV had become totally digital. Starting in the 2016 timeframe, households started to abandon their cable TV subscriptions in favor of more customized streaming companies, otherwise known as cutting the cord. But there is no cutting of the cord. A cable is a cable is a cable. However, when you are watching a program such as this meeting on Comcast SCM's Gov Channel 96 or on the youtube.com/Simsbury TV channel, you're watching a video stream. Everything is a stream these days, all video. On Comcast Channel 96, the stream goes from SCM equipment in Town Hall upstairs into a computer known as a set-top box supplied by Comcast at your house. On the YouTube SCM channel, the stream goes from the same SCM equipment upstairs into a computer in the form of a PC or a smart TV or a Roku box, etc. at your house. In both cases, the stream is decoded by a computer and shows up as video to watch and audio stream to listen. Both streams travel across the same cable into your house. As a matter of fact, both streams can flow simultaneously, such as one to a set-top box and one to a laptop. House Bill 5446 is for digital equity among all communication providers in the state. It levels the playing field by expanding the gross earnings tax from only video providers, namely cable providers, to all communication providers, landline, wireless, or satellite. The gross earnings tax becomes a tax of general applicability. In addition, House Bill 5446 removes the exemption on taxable personal property tax that is now enjoyed by cable certificate holders, Comcast in our town. This will benefit the town. Right now, they have an exemption. It makes nonprofit community access providers, SCM, whole again financially. No longer will the money SCM receives annually, currently $11.22 annually per cable TV subscriber, be based on the number of cable TV subscribers. In 2015, before subscribers started to abandon cable TV in favor of streaming services, SCM received about $66,000 to $67,000. This year, I estimate the funding will be down to in the $52,000 to $53,000 range, a drop of about 38% when considering inflation. With House Bill 5446 passing into law, SCM will receive what it received for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015.
30 seconds, Mark.
Indexed annually for inflation, which is currently about $86,500. There are also some modifications to PECPIDIA, which I believe will benefit SCM. While the time frame is very short for written comments, SCM would appreciate the Board of Selectmen submitting written support before Wednesday at 3 p.m. I or Patrick Fallon, as SCM station manager, can assist in uploading the written document. While addressing the town budget is critical, I suggest that tonight's agenda be amended to include the board approving that the first selectman submit written comments on behalf of the entire board to the NC committee. And for town boards and Russian color TV, please go to simsburytv.com to watch a 10-minute video on this topic.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Picked a good meeting to amend the agenda. Is there anybody else here for public audience? Oh, sure.
Sharon Byron, life president of Simsbury. I just want to support the park and rec idea of getting in a splash pad there, which is very, very popular all over Seattle, North Carolina, and any other place. It's making moving today, Denver as well. So you can see them in operation. There's some great models there. And I also want to be sure that they're in the budget, that you have been able to ensure safety on the bike trail, in the cleaning of the bike trail, all the way from here to Avon. You know, as I spoke last week, a little while ago, I was riding a bike for 3 years on this trail, and I haven't seen it when it hasn't been cleaned and that kind of thing. So I wanna be sure that we maintain it, but that a person walking there doesn't have to worry about someone, you know, coming out of the bushes or anything like that. I have had that happen to me during the 3-year experience. So it's a wonderful attribute for our town and something that everybody can use. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else here for public audience? Gonna move to the first selectmen's report, which is going to be short tonight in that we've been spending the last week plus on the budget. I do wanna make an announcement that the golf course driving range is opening tomorrow. Driving range is opening tomorrow. And when is the golf course opening?
Thursday.
Thursday, so for anybody anxious to get out there. I don't have the info with me, but there is a presentation, is it at the library, the Home for Habitat information, I think it's the Pollinator Pathway has a series going on.
First Church.
First Church, and I couldn't find the information, but I'll post it online when I find it. I wanna thank Tanisha Grant, who does the open choice program at Henry James Middle School, for inviting me to speak to her group after school, and to talk about women in leadership positions. It was the most intimidating thing that I've done in a long time, is talking to 8th grade girls. So pretty fun. And then there's some information that I have here from the bike ped community on smart cycling. The dates are April 5th and April 6th. I'll also post that and send that out. And I believe that is all I have for tonight, and I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Wendy. So, good evening, everybody. Just 3 quick announcements. From PD, the annual Citizens Police Academy started on Thursday, February 22nd. It is the 21st annual Citizens Police Academy, 21st annual. Over the 10-week academy, adult residents, business owners, and town employees will learn about the services provided by the police department, the region, and the court system. They'll meet and interact with the men, women, and the canine of the police department and observe officers on patrol and dispatch work in our communications center. From my office, just relaying this that I think everyone knows, but we'll mention it again, the Human Library is coming this month, Saturday, March 23rd. It's 10 a.m. at the Simsbury Public Library, organized by the Diversity, Equity, and 30 seconds, Mark. 30 seconds. Anybody beat that? Organized by DEI, by the DEI Council. So in the best sense of the word, the Human Library is a library of people. And what's really cool is it's about those persons and their experiences, particularly with prejudice. However, instead of paperback books, actual people are on loan for conversations. The concept is about acknowledging and challenging the prejudice that we all carry towards one another. For that reason, the Human Library creates a safe space for conversation where topics subject to taboo, marginalization, or stigmatization can be openly addressed without any condemnation implications. The people acting as books have directly or indirectly been exposed to that prejudice, bias, or discrimination based on their lives. Really encourage people to attend that. It's very cool. And from Social Services, Cheese Day, I've learned about that, is tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Shepherd of the Hills Lutheran Church. Cheese Day, our food distribution event, is typically held on the second Tuesday of each month, and participants are scheduled for shopping appointments at 15-minute intervals. Pantry bags are provided for clients to bring each time, and at appointments, clients are able to select items and receive fresh produce and household goods. Residents who meet income guidelines are eligible to be a pantry participant and meet the legal definition of being homebound. If they do, they may receive monthly delivery of their pantry items as well. It's an entirely volunteer-based service and relies on so many volunteers, and we thank them all for their service. That's all I have this evening.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Selectmen liaison and subcommittee reports, and I will start down with Kevin.
So it stole my thunder on the human library thing, but I think it's good to echo from both my liaison with the library and the council, an international organization that's provided the context that is represented by our own neighbors willing to talk about issues that you might have questions about. So it encourages those who have time to make the time and spend some time there on the 28th. That's all for me.
Diana?
From the Aging and Disability Commission, there's two things. They're still looking for additional funding for their programming, including Super Thursday events, to get those up and running. They got decimated during COVID. Super Thursday provides once a month luncheons for seniors, and then again, the ongoing disability events that are done quarterly. In addition, they're partnering with For All Ages and working on a series on loneliness in seniors. And it is a really important program. It's going to be a 4-part series with all ages, and then there's going to be something later in the fall directly from the Aging and Disability Commission on addressing loneliness in seniors and loneliness and isolation, and how it affects mental health and outreach. From Parks and Rec, I will tell you that I do know their list of priorities that they want in their budget, including splash pad, if you haven't heard. Breaking news, they want a splash pad. But no, they had from their commission meeting, they made a list of their priorities, and I know a lot of them are in the budget, including golf path and drainage. And I believe that's all I have for this month, for this meeting.
Okay, well, thank you.
I don't have anything for this.
Okay, good, that's
Thank
good. This is just Hometown Heroes met, we start that in May. We send out the applications or people start applying for that, but we met last week because there's a change that we will allow people that are from appointed boards to be nominated if they're doing work that's not related to their appointed board or commission. And we're also getting a new member, Sabrina's replacing Len Lanza. Sabrina Teixeira, who is a 20-year veteran and member of American Legion. And that's all I have for tonight.
So I have from the Planning Commission, at their last meeting, they discussed the POCD. They're going to be working with related boards such as zoning, open space, HDC, sustainability, any that apply. But they'll be reaching out to kind of work on implementation and prioritization of our award-winning POCD. So we also have a public safety meeting coming up on the 28th.
For me, just wanted to let everyone know that the girls' basketball team advanced and they're gonna be playing this weekend. We don't know the date yet, it's either Saturday or Sunday, at Mohegan Sun. And the boys' hockey team is also advanced to the semifinals. So good for Simsbury. There was no juvenile review board meeting this month, there are no cases. I had a chance to go to the police commission, right before this meeting. Officer Jared will start in April. 2 officers are coming back this month. They're implementing a new system called Rapid SOS, which is a new system that works with 911, so it allows you to put information in, and they can use Google Earth to get a more precise location. They started the speed enforcement campaign that we approved. Nick I can't pronounce his last name. He was presented as a new officer and I believe he was approved to be an officer. And then there was a proposed resolution for retirement plan. They voted on this proposal and it was accepted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before I get into the regular agenda, can I get a motion to amend the agenda to include support for HB 5446 as Mark asked, to see if the board would wanna provide comments as a board?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? Oh, we're adding it, so all those in favor of adding it to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, sorry. Before I get to the real selectmen action, I wanna do our consent agenda. And I'd like to move that we move action items A and C, which the Pine Hill is fairly straightforward and no financial impact. And also the appointments A, B, and C to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there any discussion on those? All those in favor of moving those to the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, so those are the consent agenda. Now we're in selectmen action, so I'd like to take up that first agenda item that Mark suggested. And we are going to write a letter or testimony in favor of what Mark wants us to include, that helps SCM. So if everyone's in favor, I think we could write something and sign it from the full board. Would that be good for you, Mark? Would the board be in favor of doing that? Of all of us?
So yes, I'm gonna be in support of doing this. As far as procedure though, I don't know that we're gonna have a chance to review it, and so I would be willing to offer to the first selectman to be able to draft it, obviously with support. But I don't know if the full board will be able to vote on it in time and all that stuff and have the meeting that would be required without the language, so.
Can we get just consent to compile?
It's speaking on behalf of the board, but
Yeah, on
it's your
behalf
own
of the
letter.
board, and you
Right.
could provide input if you like.
Yes, I would be happy to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of doing that, say aye. Okay, that's whatever we're doing.
We're authorizing the first selectman to
Selectman to
draft a
draft a
letter
letter.
With your
and
help
yes.
and Mark's help.
Okay.
Okay, good. Alright, so the next item is the proposed amendments to the town code and charter that we had the public hearing on last week. So for tonight, there was a couple of changes in here we made the 1 year. Do you wanna talk about the changes that were made, Tom?
The one, only changes were the one from that was presented to you last year or last week or 2 weeks ago with the 2 years being the amount to qualify was to 1 year. And it has been approved and reviewed by our town attorney to state that that's not a significant enough change that requires another public hearing. And then he also confirmed that the abatement benefits would only apply to real estate and motor vehicle taxes and not business personal property.
Okay, and that was not included in the new thing, but we're okay with it being, I'm just asking to have, there was no change to that in the body of it, but the understanding is that's what it applies to and it's not.
Correct, that wasn't needed to be added to the word because the terms of the ordinance already had that.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion effective March 11, 2024 to adopt the proposed amendments to town code. Chapter 141, Article 5, tax abatement for volunteer firefighters and ambulance personnel as presented, which shall be effective 21 days after publication in a newspaper having circulation within the town of Simsbury, and further move to authorize a summary of the revised ordinance be published.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is
So
there
I
any-
still have discussion,
Okay.
so I understand that we're confident with it, but I think for clarity's sake, it would make me more comfortable if we added language similar to personally owned residential real property where it references property ownership. I just think that the implementation is consistent with this. I spoke with the fire district and there didn't seem to be concerns about that, and I think that clarity is always better in an ordinance than ambiguity. And I would hate for somebody to feel like something was taken away from them that they earned. And I think that our intent here is that it's personally owned residential real property, and so if I could ask that as a friendly amendment to this motion, that we adopt the language that includes language like that, as long as it's acceptable to the attorney, and we warn it like that. If there's others that are willing to accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, I'm willing to accept it. And Tom will make a note of where we want that
Sure.
added and bring.
I'm okay with that as long as others are.
Is everybody, okay, so let's take a vote on it, right? Oh, well, that was discussion, so all
was
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Tom, you got that? Okay, so that one's, I think we're in the budget now, so let's switch gears here, right? Cause it's not Saturday, it's not a workshop, it's a real meeting tonight. So we're back to discuss the budget. Let's get to it here. Couple things. Where's my, oh, this is the wrong thing. Moving faster than I thought, Mark, so
Stay with it.
I'm trying, okay, so
Second.
we're punchy because we were here all day Saturday. So we're here to talk about the budget tonight. We still have quite a bit of work to do, but so I'm going to turn this over to Mark. I'm gonna just open this up with a couple things. Mark, the finance team, Amy, Melissa, worked really hard to find some savings in the operating side of the budget, so I think it would be good if we start at the operating side of the budget and talk through that. Mark, you looking up your stuff?
Yeah, I got you.
You guys, Amy, how does that sound for you? Good? Are you gonna are we gonna look at,
I don't
Not
think,
yet.
I don't think we need one, but if we do, we can
are
certainly
you
pull.
laughing at me?
pull
You're
something.
laughing at the lack of a
Did you have
sign.
trouble?
I just saw that. Wasn't it down before?
And then
It's
went
been
back up.
down and up and
Oh,
down
okay,
and up and.
It's not working.
Oh, that's
It's just dead.
We don't need to see the budget before we vote on it. That's okay.
Say that again, we're just, will we write them on the wall with Sharpie?
I'll just say, and I sent a note to Mark earlier, I'd like to commend Mark and the staff for doing that hard work and identifying some opportunities for both funding mechanisms and real savings and the operating budget. We had a long and tough discussion the other day, and the Board of Finance is right about finding some savings here, and I'd like to commend them for finding those and doing actually our hard work for us.
Okay, so Mark, or Amy, do you wanna present the savings that you?
Yeah, I'll just go over a few, suggestions, and so, first of all, thank you for all of your work on Saturday. We, even after we submitted the preliminary budget, the team has been working to find additional savings and to work with you. And I think a lot of what we've been able to kind of pinpoint grew out of the dialogue from Saturday, so just wanna thank you for that. So, and some of these ideas too came from conversations with others, both internally and externally, so there's no pride of authorship on this, and obviously the board will consider each of them and or none of them. There is an opportunity to adjust the vacancy rate factor, that if you did that would save about $100,000. And that is item one that we're recommending that the board do. That would reduce the operating budget by $100,000. There have been discussions also about the possibility of making a little bit of a cut on paving. Paving is typically paid for from a number of sources. A small amount of it comes from operating. And the suggestion is, after talking to our DPW commission engineer, that $100,000 could be reduced in on the operating side from paving. So there's $200,000. Item three concerns the proposal to assist the SVAA with funding. This would be the second year, as you'll recall, they were funded previously by the town from, I believe, ARPA. The preliminary budget has $200,000 in there coming from operating. We would propose that the board consider using reserves for that. I think that could be considered appropriate by the board, considering the fact that we have to negotiate a new memorandum of understanding or contract with the SBAA. And we're not certain as yet whether that's gonna be another one-year deal. My preference is that we get a 3-year lookout with them so we can do some planning on our side. And obviously, as we discussed about at length on Saturday, we've got certain a need to understand better what the longer term plan is there. So item 3 again would save $200,000 from operating, but you'd be increasing your use of reserves by doing that. Item 4 is a proposed $205,000 reduction to Simsbury Farms our contribution to Simsbury Farms. This has to do, and I can get help from staff on this, but I'll do my best. The 205 was in the budget to correct an error last year on a transfer, had to do with the pension funds. In the budget we presented, we were paying that out of operating, and we now propose that it be paid from this year's projected reserves savings, if you will. Year-end savings was a question that a couple of board members asked us to take a look at year-end savings and where we might be able to get some impact on the budget this year in anticipation of savings during this year. That's $205,000. There was a lot of discussion on Saturday about positions. We have 4 new positions proposed. One position that is filled, currently being funded by ARPA for a social worker in response to 2 of the questions, 2 board member questions. We reworked that number, and if it was cut, the savings would be $100,000 as opposed to the $80,000 that we put up on the board as costing the funds. So on the preliminary, there was an 80 estimate, but the savings, if cut, would be $100,000. And then lastly, item 6 is that again, our thanks to Tom Roy on this, but because we had a pretty good winter this year, we're proposing that we could get by with about $25,000 less on the salt line, and that's the recommendation there as well. So all told, when you add those up, you're looking at a savings that's about 700 some odd thousand. I think just for context and for those watching from home, the Board of Finance guidance, which we referred to in the Finance Director's email to everybody of last week, asked us to get us down, cut by, Amy, what was it, 587 or something?
560,000.
About 560,000. What we worked hard to do here is give the board a range of options that exceed 700,000, because you may not want to do one of them, you may want to do some combination of these. It would be within your authority, for example, to decide to reduce the paving by only 50,000 as opposed to 100,000. But I guess the purpose in our efforts over the last few days and weeks really is to find what you could do that would have the least pain, considering the guidance that we've got and the fact that we're all working so hard together to get to mitigate any potential tax increase. So we're happy to circle back. I think one more thing I'll just throw in here, because we had some discussion earlier about the splash pad. The proposal in the preliminary budget was to bond the $150,000. We're now proposing that be paid for by reserves as well. Also, there's clarity now on the $900,000 for the second year for the actual construction phase. And we are changing that in the capital plan with your amendment to $475,000 coming from bonding and $475,000 coming from grants, as opposed to the full $900,000 being bond. So between the $475 and the $150, we're reducing the request for bonding by $625,000 and support the approval of the $150,000 for the design phase of the splash pad. I'm gonna stop there and take any questions. Again, those are just suggestions for the board to consider on the operating side. I know we've got work to do on CNR and capital, but if we could get some consensus around these, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Yes. So I'm wondering what are the total for year-end savings that you're projecting? And can you also, originally we were going to be taking at our presentation $650,000 from reserves. What is the total now that would be taken from reserves?
No, so so the CNR, I think, or the capital was 650. CNR was 650,000.
Oh, the other was 5.
And then the capital was 500, and those were the capital reserves. On the general fund, the year-end savings is about 4.2 million. I think that we can count on probably about 3.5 million safely.
So the preliminary used 500,000 of reserves for operating, and we're your question, I think, is of these suggestions, is that what you're driving at, right? So the vacancy rate doesn't affect that, right?
Right.
Okay, so number two, the reduction in paving doesn't affect reserves. You're moving item three, 200,000 from SVA to reserves, that would increase it from 500 to 700. 205 is proposed to be paid from current year savings, so that's separate. Those are the only items, so as far as I can see, you're increasing on our suggestions by 200
And the 150, correct?
and the
Yeah.
150.
Do you want the total after those? 2.3 million.
2.3 is left. 2.3 is left if you're working down.
And that's before we save any buffer, is that right, Amy, like, do we have to leave, like, usually $500,000 or $1 million in reserves? Is that the 2.3 with or without that? Just to ask how much we can play with when we get to
So
it.
we don't really have a policy on how much has to be left in there, so technically you can spend all of the 2.3 million if you want to. I probably wouldn't be comfortable going any less than 2 million, but that's because I have plans.
That's separate from the fund balance, you still have the fund balance.
You're saying leave 2 million and then we're gonna get year-end savings of 2 point something million, so that would leave 4 million in there for next year?
I mean, theoretically, so see, this is all part of the reserve conversation that I wanna have with the Board of Finance after you guys set your priorities. Because I have plans for the out years because we are having major tax impacts. So based on those decisions is the basis for the conversation with the Board of Finance. So depending on how much is in there is dependent on the conversation that we have. Therefore, I am non-committal.
Okay, because, well, let's just talk about since this is on your discussion page.
I could just be maybe a little more committal on it, but then just my own personal is if you're gonna spend down capital reserves, leave at least 500 in there, which was a number that I'm comfortable with. Obviously, others would prefer you to leave more in there, but you know, in anticipation of this year's expected savings, I think you can, there's certainly a lot of wiggle room. There's a good amount of wiggle room for this board to make those decisions. Particularly if you take some or even all of the proposals that we're suggesting on the operating side.
Okay, so I was just gonna, I was gonna suggest that we just go through and see, like put a motion out there, see if there's a motion. If someone would make one to approve all the reductions to the operating proposed by the town manager and finance director.
I was hoping to have just a little bit of discussion.
Yeah, well, we
I
can-
mean, do you wanna move it so that we can discuss it?
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
So move to accept the adjustments to the budget that presented by the town manager.
Okay,
So moved, second.
okay, any discussion?
I just, so the vacancy rate was on there too, and I hadn't thought to ask it before. Does the partial funding, the 0.5 FTE, well, it's gonna be a full-time role for the mechanic driver, I guess is the title. Is that impacted at all by the vacancy rate?
It wouldn't be because it's a half a year ad and we don't expect to fill it early. But it's a good question. The town's treatment of the vacancy factor has been helpful in building reserves, so we're not looking to disturb, but we safely think that there's 100,000 there to grab.
On the reduction in the paving, this might go to Tom, it says from operating in the parenthetical here, but we're actually just not doing that work. Is that what the $100,000 reduction is, or is it being funded somewhere else?
It would be reducing the amount of work or the amount of money
How much
funded
is
for the
like
work.
mileage, or is there a certain area or something that you had in
Better
mind?
part of a half mile, and it depends right now on what we get for pricing this year. The pricing fluctuates, believe it or not, through the entire construction season.
Sure.
Week to week, the actual price varies based upon the price of liquid asphalt in New Haven.
Okay.
Go figure. But we can also look at some different treatments. The only thing I would say is this is, you know, an extreme thing. We're gonna drop down for 1 year. We may end up paving slightly less than our 10-year goal. And if we do this for this year, we're okay. If we try to make this a new norm, it would have significant effects on the program.
That's why I wanted to ask the question. So I think that's it. How much snow are we gonna get next year, cause we're reducing our
I've been looking at that crystal ball.
Just kidding, that's it for me, thank you.
I do have a question or concern about moving the 200,000 SVA from operating to reserves, only because we know that there's something that we may be continually funding year after year after year, and it may be something that is ultimately as part of our budget. And if we, even though we need to do an agreement, and understanding we need the agreement, I have concerns about moving to reserves, even though I would love to save more on operating, and I think there may be other ways. Moving that to reserve concerns me because I don't think it's going to be a one-off expense, and I think that reserves should be utilized for things that are more project related or one-off expenses. And if this is going to be something that's ongoing, I would rather have it rolled into operating so it's something that we can work with every year and has part of our set budget rather than take from reserves. So if we can look at something else in reserves in another way, that's my concern about moving SVAA. I'm not saying I don't wanna fund SVAA, I just don't think that's where it needs to be funded from. And I have a concern about using reserves for that, knowing that this is something we're going to look at our budget year after year. And so I'd rather plan for it.
Is there another discussion item?
Well, sticking with that, actually, I'm actually for it going to the reserve because we don't have the MOU. Until we have the MOU, it's hard to establish a line item. So I'm not saying it should be next year be taken out of reserves, but I think this year it is a one-off because we will have a MOU in place next year and then we can establish line item with forecasting. So for this year, I could see it potentially as a coming out of reserve for this unique instance.
If I could just add, I think I see both sides, which is why, this is a kind of, it's in the package of, what can we do to get us where we need to be. I don't like pulling it from reserves normally either. I would look at this as a transition year, so you funded it from ARPA, is my understanding, last year.
Okay.
And our hope is that it's not a continual, obviously even by their own presentation, they still, maintain that they're totally sustainable in the out years, 6 or 7 years. We're continuing to look at that. Maybe we call this year as a transition year, and as Stephen says, you pull it from reserves this year. I would take it, to heart that there's no expectation that we would do that next year. If it was, once you've got the contract, then you've got a contractual commitment to make. And if we make that a 3-year deal, then I think it shifts to operating, as Diana says. But without that, I've got to land in favor of taking it from reserves at this point.
Cause I hear you, cause even, when you say it's not going to be ongoing, but when you're talking 7 years out, in my opinion, that's ongoing for 7 years. And that's, we don't know, again, like if Tom or I can get out his crystal ball and project what we're gonna look like in 7 years, that would be great. But to me, it's gonna be, if it was an ask last year and it came out of ARPA, it's gonna be continuing. I'm happy to go with the majority, but that's my express.
Let's see if there's any other discussion down this end of the table. I would just say that I was on the fence too with the reserves versus operating, but until we have the contract, I agree with that, and this way we're not taxing for it. As long as we do have the reserves to handle it, and that will be where Amy has to work the magic to see what we have in reserves.
I had one other quick question on that. So there was some funding from the town previously. Do we know what line it was funded under prior to ARPA? I guess it was 17 or 18, does anybody know?
Oh, in 17 or 18
I don't
years
remember
ago?
the year, but I know that that's
Yeah.
been a discussion.
They said, I don't know either.
Okay.
It wasn't through the budget process, it was a supplemental,
Oh, it
I
was a
think when they
supplemental
funded them
expense.
previously.
Okay,
So that
So,
kind of
yeah,
answers it. So this is in the same category of doing that. Exactly what happened before.
yeah, okay,
That's all. I'm just reinforcing where we're ending up.
good point.
I talk about things that have no value.
Wait, is Ken
And you're
talking?
self-aware, you're self-aware, and I know that we're in discussion now, so I'm gonna ask for a vote, so all those in favor of supporting the $700,000 savings to operating or remove reductions in operating,
Is
say
this
aye.
on, just point of
We're just
point of
doing
clarity,
this.
all 6 items?
All
recommended?
6, yeah, we're gonna talk about the positions after this, but we're talking about all 6 items that you guys proposed to make reductions.
Yeah, so the motion was for
Yes.
the reductions that were presented by the town manager, all 6. I didn't hear any changes, right? And then the other thing that's in your note that says for discussion, we didn't talk about.
No, I have a squiggly line there.
That's official.
It is.
It's official.
So, okay, all those in favor of that say aye.
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 Okay, that's passed 6-0. Okay, so let's stay with operating. Is that agreed upon here?
Please, thank you.
So I just wanna bring, and it's hard to not see this happening in real life, Amy, or to see where we are. Cause we don't.
So with the 730,000 in cuts, you went from 5.53 without ARPA to 2.92.
And if I could just emphasize, 2.92 is under 3, and Board of Finance guidance was 3.5. So that's why I asked, are you taking all 6 of these? Because there's some room there to still stay within Board of Finance guidance, but you know, we gave you everything we had, and they're painful.
But there's a hard discussion on the total levy though, still, right, with all the other
Well,
projects.
I was gonna ask what the which we can't see, like where we are tax wise in the
So
levy
you're
right
at
now.
an increase of 5.29, assuming that the Board of Education comes down to their guidance.
Okay, so can you just give us like a dollar amount for the 450 or like how much more would a
So the median home would pay $446 more.
$446 more?
And we were at 6 something.
Yeah.
680.
That's still a lot, right? Okay, so to carry through on the operating side, there's been a lot of discussion on Saturday about the different various positions that have been asked for in the town manager's budget. And what I'd like to do is handle this by bringing up each one separately to our board and to ask for the board for motions to include these proposed positions in our upcoming Board of Selectmen budget, which is what we're creating today.
So Wendy, I'd offer if it's acceptable to you, since they're in the budget proposal, it feels more like we have to remove them if they're the new positions.
Well, I think I'm allowed to motion.
You do whatever you want, I'm
Yeah.
just saying in my mind it makes more sense, but if you want to do that,
I think
it's
we're
okay.
including them in our budget.
Okay.
I mean, does that work for people on this?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
That we're trying to include them in the next budget that's going up, so I'm gonna start with a motion, I'm gonna ask the board for a motion to include the public works position of mechanic driver in the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 2024-25 at a cost of $51,424.
I'll make a motion to include the mechanic driver position.
I'll make a motion to second that.
Thank you, and is there any discussion on that? No, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So the next item I have is to ask for a motion to include the police department position of records clerk in the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 24-25 at a cost of $92,510.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
I have discussion.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, mine's under the other position.
Okay.
Is this inclusive of,
That's a separate to be this
okay, this is
right?
just on the records clerk hire?
The records clerk hire, yes.
Yes, for the police department.
Yep, okay, done with discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'm gonna ask for a motion to include in the finance department the position of town hall administrative specialist in the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 24-25 at a cost of $99,833.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, and is there discussion on that item? Yes.
I was just curious if there are any potentials there for a part-time
That's what I was,
person or temp.
we all have the same, yep.
Not in shared, I think, you know, the answer is unfortunately no, we and you're on the admin shared position, is that
The town clerk admin.
Yeah, there would, because it's shared between 3, I think we weighed this, you know, at the beginning of the budget process, and you know, the ask was for, you know, 2 FTEs, which wasn't gonna work, cut that down to 1, and then we really asked folks, can you share? It is cheaper part-timer, obviously because of fringe, but I've gotta say, we can't get there, so we tried. The ask is for 1 shared between those divisions, and happy to answer any other questions, but a part-timer between them doesn't get the work done.
Does it have to be the same person that's part-time? Couldn't you hire 3 part-time positions in theory?
The idea is to cross-train them because although the calendar is seasonal and you know, for certain months you've got them dedicated to tax and for a couple months you might have them dedicated to assessment. The years that aren't assigned specifically, we want that one individual cross-trained so that if there's extra work in one, that's where we can assign them. So it's almost like a triage sort of approach to an increasing workload. We can put that person wherever we need to at any given time.
When does the benefits eligibility start for hours for the town?
17.5.
17, yeah. So I mean, that kind of throws that apart as far as the savings.
Is there a possibility, and I might be wrong, that an internship type approach could be functional in this sort of environment? Sort of a win-win for the applicant as well as the town?
The main impediment or the main drawback to the intern approach is that they're only temporary. You know, I have a wonderful intern in my office and in fact, we're just starting interviews for the UConn internship that will renew when that incumbent leaves. Because we're talking about training an individual to work across 3 different divisions, it would be counterproductive, I think, to go to the intern. Might be cheaper in the short run, but the turnover would just make it unworkable, I think.
But if I'm following the theory behind the position, it's actually, as I again understand and please correct me.
Yeah.
Like 1/3 of the year they're working with finance and 1/3 of the year they're working with the town clerk, and obviously the final third. But they're not simultaneous. So that's why I guess I don't understand why we can't break it out.
You know, there's a bit of interaction there, you know, certainly on the revenue side, on the tax and assessment side, you know, other municipalities throughout Connecticut have found that tax and assessment is where there are the most synergies between shared positions. So we're certainly not, you know, out ahead of the curve when it comes to that. But, you know, if for example, someone is coming in to surrender their plates on a vehicle that they're exchanging, they're going to the assessor, only the assessor can make that change. But then they're walking across the hall to the tax collector once the change is made to make the payment of whatever the adjusted amount is. So there is an interrelationship between certainly those 2 divisions that just lends itself to having one individual cross-trained. And so as a customer, in terms of the customer experience, you're walking into town hall and it's kind of one-stop shopping. And for that reason, we think that those 2 divisions particularly, but then we throw in town clerk because of all of the extra work that town clerk is particularly getting on early voting and so forth. It just makes the case so much stronger. It might be good enough to win your support with just tax and assessment, but it becomes a slam dunk when you look at the extra workload that the town clerk is taking up.
What would the training period be to learn that many tasks of 3 different departments though? When do we find the functionality of the applicant?
Another reason why it should be a full-time person as opposed to a part-time person, because and why it shouldn't be an intern, frankly, you're investing some time in training here, Stephen, there's no question about that. It's not higher level functions, but it's mid-level to administrative, and there is significant training and investment in that individual. And hopefully that person the position could become a growing field for, you know, upward mobility in the organization as well. So when we talk about succession planning and retirements looming and things like that, you know, hopefully this will be, you know, ideally a town resident maybe that wants to return to the workplace and get back into a full-time position here in town. We're gonna look for the right fit on this, knowing that it's gonna be a significant amount of training on the part of those 3 areas.
My question.
My question is just the salary. I mean, it seems like a high salary for an administrative position.
Yeah, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so because of the office that it's in and our we've lined it up pretty much with our union contracts as being kind of at that entry level of those offices. So that way we wouldn't run into any giving union work out type thing, and just kind of guessing that it would fall into that union and then it would be able to kind of cross-train and do similar work that the positions in those offices are doing.
Okay, so the motion's on the table, all those in favor of supporting the specialist say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's 2, all those opposed say nay. Nay.
I'm actually gonna abstain if that's, okay, I still don't feel fully.
Stephen needs consensus.
I'm struggling too, I had to make a call, so if you abstain, so then
Does it pass anyways, or?
It does not pass with an abstention, I don't believe, you need 4.
It's a be
so it's
affirmative.
not added. Either way, right, if you vote no or you abstain, it's not added. Okay,
Well, it's not deleted either, so.
Right, it's just hanging.
You know, that's the issue to the point that was made earlier. Your motion is to leave it in and it failed, so it's in.
so we're not moving it to our Board of Selectmen budget though, basically, we're voting to move it to our budget.
You didn't vote to,
Remove it.
you did not vote to remove it, so it stays in. You just failed to pass an affirmative vote to
Right.
move it forward.
To pull it out.
So that's fine, I mean, there's no vote. It's in the preliminary and it makes it to the Board of Finance, I think I'm right about that, so
So
that's fine with me, I've been. Happy to move it on. Am I wrong about that?
No, you all are gonna adopt all of your operating and capital motions when you're done this evening, so essentially what you're going to do is you're gonna vote on all of the changes that you're making to the town manager's proposed budget. So all of the things you already voted on, you're gonna have to read again, you're gonna decrease paving, you're gonna reduce public agency support for SBAA. In this instance, you're going to take out the amount that we budgeted for the town hall administrative specialist. So it's going to be in that list of items that you're changing. Because the budget as it stands is the town manager's and you're gonna vote to make changes to it
for
to
our
make
budget.
it yours, yeah.
So you're saying what we're doing now doesn't matter because we're gonna do it again later? So then why are we just,
Well,
Not
you're building
waiting.
consensus, Wendy,
I'm
but
trying to see where-
that's also why I asked about removing them, because then we could move forward the changes that we made in discussion.
Can I still ask a question, or it's closed from that point?
oh anymore? Yeah, we're in the middle of stuff, so I'll recognize you to ask a question.
If we don't pass the position, what happens?
If you do not affirmatively take
No,
it,
I mean
take
physically
it
to the
out.
town clerk, the assessor, and the tax collector.
Look, there's a tremendous amount of workload there, I think, you know, we don't, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, I'm respectful of, you know, can't get all of these in, you've got, but I think on the operating side, and this was why, you know, I think by accepting all 6 of those recommendations, you cut operating effectively by 200,000 more than the Board of Finance asked. So to do that and not approve the positions was my fear. But what's happened so far, at least the consensus is that there's no consensus on this, it shifts to the Board of Finance. It survives this part of the budget process unless you rework the motion. But I would say if there's no consensus here, send it to the Board of Finance.
Okay, sounds like it's gone, that's good.
Alright, well, I guess that's a, okay, so should I reword the next one? Kevin, you want me to, I could do the generalist in a different manner, if that works better. I'm asking you for your expertise here, because I wanna make sure that this goes.
So the question I think that you're looking for is, I'll make a motion to remove from the town manager's budget the proposal on the human resources director and the human resources generalist. Is that what you're looking for next?
Yeah, except the director
And
isn't
if that
really,
fails, then they stay in. And if it passes,
I can
then they're
amend
removed.
his.
you can amend it too, okay, so you're making that motion?
That's the next position, right? We're talking about the 4?
Yeah,
And we've
except-
already reconciled the social worker position in the previous 6 that we talked about.
We did. The question that I had was, does the HR director warrant a separate motion? Because it is not a new position.
It's a reclass.
It's a reclassification and could and should potentially go through personnel where we could decide on salary increase
So I will make,
outside of the budget discussion.
Well, accept a friendly amendment.
I will,
Yeah,
that was my
from
friendly
Diana,
amendment
to discuss only the generalist.
Great.
to separate generalist from the HR salary increase, potential promotion.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? This is for to remove the generalist position without the HR director. I'll just make some discussion on that. We're all torn on a lot of these positions because they're really hard and we're all trying to make decisions in the best interest of the residents here facing a tax increase. But I do think that
an HR as proposed department is something that would be helpful in town hall. And I know that the town manager would like have a HR generalist. So I do think that's something that whether if we don't support it this year, we'll be looking at it next year. That's my comments.
So I'll add on to that. I think that it would feel much more comfortable for me, and we have to make tough decisions, and I very much respect Mark for jumping in to the community here and making quick assessments and doing the best that he could and taking input from senior staff, here. Process is important too, right? And process helps us to uncover things that might not have been considered, and process here wasn't able to be followed because of the time. And that's not anyone's necessarily fault, but that's also the reality that we're in. I would like to be able to have a better understanding about all those pieces, and also our own personnel subcommittee to be able to review that. The classification of both positions and being able to attach the salary and all that to them is an important part of the process. Regrettably, and knowing that Mark made a strong appeal for this and this need, I don't feel comfortable at this time knowing all the things here. And and further to that, Mark is absolutely right. Town staff did an excellent job in finding these savings to make adopting something like this easier for us. But we also just heard what the tax increase would likely be still, even with those savings. So it makes it extremely difficult to support new positions which have long-term impact for us, maybe positively for workload here in town, but also long-term for us as we levy taxes on the residents who live here. I've also had a bias myself in coming into the conversation about wanting to support new roles that are as close to the resident as possible. And unfortunately, while I also have a huge amount of respect for the team that supports the staff who are supporting the residents directly, this was a harder one for me because I came into this discussion wanting to support things that were closest to the residents as possible, and this one unfortunately was farther away from that. I hope that it's the right decision when we remove it. I still don't, it doesn't change the amount of respect that I have for the HR function, here and the great work that's being done there, or Mark's recommendation. It just feels like it's not the right time.
I have a comment about this in that I would have actually liked to have heard from Eric that in his position, what is needed in that support and what would be the kind of verification or what would be the reasoning behind he being elevated and then having a new hire, really what is the justification from him, what that it would be needed for him. I agree with Kevin and I absolutely respect Mark and the reasoning behind you, but I just not sure that we know enough yet and we understand it fully fleshed out without going through the personnel and to justify this hire at this point.
And I agree with that sentiment. That between Kevin and Diana, they pretty much covered where I stand on it, and I do appreciate that we were able to find these other savings, but I do think this is a big department change, and we did just grow that department by one last year by creating the budget director position, or half, but that department grew. And also I'm just very concerned, we were looking at it as we started with a 7.8% tax increase and now we're congratulating ourselves by potentially getting to 5%, but I don't believe that that's good enough for our residents. I think especially after last year's and what's being projected for next year, that I think we need to try to do even better than that.
All those in favor of cutting the HR generalist position, say aye.
We're cutting?
Cutting the
Okay, so
generalist,
this
we
opposite
changed
last
it,
one.
we switched, cause we were going to, so that was 4, all those opposed in cutting it, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
So that's a 4-2, so it doesn't make it in, cut, 4-2, thank you.
Not ecstatic about it.
No, I know, I hear you.
We also have the study coming this year.
Right.
I think we're better suited to this, as you alluded to, next year.
Well, that's where it is, like, right, so
So I look forward to the
Thank
discussion.
you everybody for giving this such a I know we spent a lot of
It's
time, I would just say, you know, and I get it, it's a tough year. We worked hard to get the 700,000, which you've accepted. Operating is now well under the guidance from Board of Finance. I would just say in response to Diana's question, you know, Eric wasn't a department head.
Correct.
That's why I didn't put him up.
Correct.
We did not ask the tax collector to come and justify the admin position, nor did we ask the assessor to come and justify it. We relied on the justification from the town manager and in that case, the department head, who is the finance director. So until and unless he's promoted to department head,
Yeah.
he's not gonna be at the budget meeting.
So I'm not on personnel, but I look forward to the partnership and looking to see how we
Oh,
get to
absolutely. Yes.
on this resource if it's needed.
This was not an easy.
No, I get it.
and I do wanna say for the HR coordinator position, I think it can be discussed in personnel as we do this to decide if that needs to be reclassified as an HR director. You know, as we look at comparable salaries to come up with what the actual salary should be, so we can take that
Will
as we
that
go
come with
forward.
the classification
I
study
think-
results and
I
it'll kind of
think
tie
so.
in together?
Yeah, cause that should, right, cause you already had a jump on that, I think,
Yep, we
so
did.
that would be good.
Thank you.
Okay, so Melissa, what should we bother doing now that we're gonna do later, or Amy?
Can I just actually give you an update? So my
Yes.
debt number was wrong, so now with all of those changes, are you taking out the town hall position or does that move forward?
Apparently,
Yeah, move forward.
It's going forward.
That one
Going
goes forward, okay. So then your total reductions are 883,647. Your new budget number is 2.37. But with the correct debt number, sorry, you're at
Yeah.
6.39 or $539 for a median tax home increase.
Say that again? It's hard to not see.
539.
Yep, 539 or 6.39.
So how were we, let me just ask this, before we were at 446.
It's an error, she's
Yeah.
correct.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Had the wrong debt service number.
thank you. Okay, 539, and what's the percentage of our, not our increase,
2.37.
okay, 2.37. What's the total town now budget?
The gross expenditures are 4.57, and then if you do the net expenditures, it's 5.8.
So for operating, this is far below, right, like
Yeah.
the inflation and all, right?
Okay. There was, I was gonna talk about operating to get consensus on some of these items, but if we're gonna, Melissa, you're telling me we have to do them later, cause there's a couple other,
I just mean the formality of it, you can obviously, you know, we're just gonna have to put into motions everything that you're, like I said, changing or.
so you're getting ahead of the game, because now you kind of.
You're tracking them all.
Yeah,
So and
yeah.
it's helping us to get to the consensus, and so
Yeah.
I
Right.
appreciate the process you're leading,
Well-
Wendy, it helps us get through this.
Yeah, cause she'll have it already at the
Yes.
end and we could just say
Right.
yes or no. So the one, I have one more item that we talked about and we never really agreed on Saturday was the Main Street Partnership.
Mm.
So I think now would be a good time to talk about that.
So I'll make a motion to reduce the line item from 100,000 to 50,000, which would be a level fund from the previous year.
I'd like to amend that motion
Okay.
to $75,000 to flat fund Sarah for a while and have the additional conditional on the MOU that will include additional responsibilities later in the
So I
year.
wouldn't accept that as a friendly amendment, but I'd
Okay.
be willing to discuss it in discussion.
Okay, weren't we in discussion?
No,
No.
but it's been moved and seconded and now we're in discussion and I didn't accept your friendly amendment.
So this motion needs to fail and then you can make a
Okay.
motion.
But then,
Or maybe it'll pass.
Or maybe it'll pass.
But
But I was explaining how she gets to her.
So
Yeah.
the $25,000 difference that we're talking about, I understand the motivation here, but I don't think that Main Street is asking for the additional 25,000, which is a significant part for me when giving people money is whether or not they wanted it. And second, to that point, I think it's worthwhile being broken out because it's separate than what our previous support had been. We provided Main Street financial support to continue the operations and the work that they're doing there. And there can be a discussion about what happens there and the right kind of influence for this board and the town government and all those functions, and I think that we should all have them. But I don't see any reason to take away that funding at this time, especially when we're talking about economic development and all that. So that's why I'm willing to support the $50,000. If you're gonna talk about an additional $25,000 in support, I would like to talk about, okay, what's the scope of work? What's the period of performance? Just the same things that I've talked about with Simsbury Volunteer Ambulance Association. And what are the outcomes and expectations there too? That would support whoever's gonna be getting the $25,000 and making sure that they're meeting those expectations. And it supports our work as fiduciaries for the community and making sure that it's being well spent. I have no concerns about the $50,000 for going to Main Street because I've seen excellent things over the years from there. Stephen could probably speak to that better than I can. But as far as adding the additional $25,000 in this motion,
Okay.
I was happy. Oh, that was enough? Okay.
But we can vote on this and we can then add another motion to add
Sure,
25,000.
I think Stephen wanted to add something.
Have we voted or is this
No,
discussion?
this is, he's still discussing the
Discussion on my motion.
50,000.
Okay, can I talk?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so Main Street, which many people know, I was on the board for many years, so I do have a fair amount of insight. The bulk of the Main Street efforts, if you will, for economic development are in fact handled by the executive director. Her salary is in the high 70,000s. Because the town has been allocating only 50,000 per year for many years now, it's never gone up. The Main Street Board has spent the majority of their efforts trying to figure out how to close that $25,000 threshold. So we say on the one hand that economic development is by far and away, I might add, our number one concern. Yet we don't even fund the executive director, leaving the Main Street Board with no option except to have the priority of funding their director. The 75 is almost the full salary, and that way Main Street can concentrate on economic development. By only giving them 50,000, you're leaving them without the ability to further the economic development because their priority is no longer economic development, but funding the existence as is. So I think we're looking for a little something more. I think part of Mark's onus when he proposed this was actually the expansion and possibly even a part-time position or whatever, however it would formulate, to have that be our economic development outreach. If not, what is our economic development outreach? It's nothing. This is our economic development outreach. To shortchange it from the 75, I'll stick with the 75. To go below 75 though, you're saying here you're handicapped, good luck. And I feel that that's too far gone. The $100,000 would have been nice, and I think if we really want economic development, you gotta spend money to make money. You talk to any businessman, they're gonna reiterate that. But going below 75,000 and sticking with the 50,000, that's gotta be over 10 years it's been at, is unrealistic and to be frank, almost offensive to Main Street that it's not even, we're doing all these other COLAs. And to be frank, the executive director is getting her COLA, but the funding is actually diminishing because it's covering less and less of the one salary that is drawn out of that organization. So I'm definitely I'm willing to agree with the 75,000 because that's not to say chump change, but they'll figure it out from there and they can create a mission where they push our economic development forward. Otherwise, I feel we're handicapping them.
So may I speak a little?
Yes, you may.
So
We're in discussion.
one, knowing that we needed some economic development as focus, we hired a town manager who has that expertise. Also, it was my understanding when you proposed the 100,000 that the intention wasn't to go straight into Main Street as to help towards salary or anything, but was a kind of a placeholder for you to use to have some wiggle room on building that partnership. At the end of the day, I think Main Street does fantastic work. I love what they do for our businesses. I only hear great things. I know that their executive director works incredibly hard. But that being said, it's not a town position with a town salary. It's its own 501c3, and so that's where I get torn with this. I think we do need to build our economic development and building our grand list growth, and that is my number one goal and priority. But even right now, it seems like there's a disagreement and where that's $25,000 is going between what Mark is saying and what you're asking for the salary, and that's why I'm concerned. Right now, I think we need to get a game plan in place for economic development before we throw money at the wall, even though it's kind of small.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. They haven't asked for the money. We don't have any way to control the money. There's no, we didn't even decide, I think as a board that we're gonna use Main Street as our economic development team. So we're kind of making assumptions that's the way we're gonna go for economic development. So I think Main Street does a great job. But in a year in which we're looking to cut money, if they haven't asked for an extra 50,000, let's come up with a plan and figure out the best way to do economic development. That's fine.
You have a discussion item?
Yeah, so all of those are good points, but there are a little, I try to take them in reverse order. So to Stephen's point, the 25 is justifiable, his words, COLA, but I'm trying to avoid that, which is why I recommended the 100, because if you're going to approve 75, the statement is, we've just given you an increase from 50 to 75 without us ever having the conversations that need to be had about what additional service, if you will, are we gonna get from them. That's why I put in my preliminary 100,000. Yes, they didn't ask for it. Shame on them. But had they asked for it, it would have been absorbed into their general fund deficit, which the board, their board has been working on for years, because there's been no increase here. From my perspective, we are essentially outsourcing economic development. And that's why we took this is not on the outside agency request part of the budget. Get it out of there, move it into operating somewhere else. But if you're outsourcing economic development, it should be 100,000. And if you only approve 75, we're not gonna get a significantly different approach from them. We're gonna get them to saying, thank you for giving us the raise that you should have given us some years ago, and it's just absorbed. So that's really all I can say.
You just lost your 25.
You know.
I'm sorry.
And just one more thing, if I could, I think, it sometimes is left unsaid, and maybe I should say it again, that just because you approve it doesn't mean that we're spending it. It is in the budget that we could spend it if there was an agreement reached.
Yeah.
And that's what.
So can I just,
That's true, but they're not paying for it if it's not spent. If it's not spent, it gets swept into reserves like everything else. That's why we've got a $20 million fund balance, and we're gonna have a surplus this year of $4 million. And so respectfully, 25,000 is de minimis when you're talking about surplus after surplus. Capital reserve, millions of dollars, general fund balance well within range. $25,000 when we're talking about economic development is,
so can I say something?
Go ahead, you
Can I-
have the better thought.
I have the gavel. We're all punchy, so sorry. So we have the $50,000 motion on the table, and I think we should vote on that, because if that fails and the other options fail, we are giving them no money. So I'd like to call a vote on the $50,000.
So just for point of clarification, if my motion fails, it stays in the budget at 100,000.
Yeah, it's at 100. We take it.
We would still have to-
It's 100.
Take it out and change it, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
So if we're still discussing, because I think in case we don't get another discussion on this, if it fails or not, or passes or whatever.
We can always do another motion.
Right. I think an agreement is important because they do a fantastic job in supporting our businesses currently. But what we need is for new businesses and new business development and new business recruiting and seeking out, and I think we should in our agreement, the charge should be, this is what we need as new businesses in our town, that we need help in recruiting and retaining, to take some tax money into our town, so it's off of the taxpayers, the residents, and even off of the small businesses. But it's great that they help the small businesses. I love our small businesses. I'm a big supporter of our small businesses, but I think, whatever fund we move forward, the charge needs to be new business being brought in a big way.
Okay, so look, can we vote on that?
Which are we voting on?
We're gonna vote on the flat funding.
There is one thing I did wanna address Curtis's thing though, that they are our economic development. We've tried to do it in-house. We've had an EDC. The EDC went so far at one point to disband. It was reorganized because of the town charter. The only one that's been able to pull off this EDC, sometimes you have to outsource. They're the ones that are pulling off the economic development. We have no other plan that I know of.
That's right.
For economic development except this. Furthermore, I believe Mark is underway with the memorandum of understanding of what our expectations are from them. And then in closing, just because I've drawn it out enough, to Diana, they do bring in, sometimes retaining a business is not just retention. Most recently, EB wanted to leave. That was about a year, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure ago. Instead of them leaving, Main Street got them to double down, and if memory serves me right, add 24 positions to the Simsbury plant, full-time positions. So yes, did she get FG?
Right.
No, but she made EB bigger. So sometimes it's not just getting a new kid on the block, it's expanding your existing kid, which is equal to retention but different. Okay, sorry.
So we're in discussion now, let's take a vote. Do you have more?
I would just like better clarification of if the funding is approved above the 50,000, what happens next with it? What is needed,
So the 50,000 is flat funded, so we're not gonna defund them. So if you
Right.
approve 100,000, they're getting 50,000. Then we call them in and we have a conversation with them, to which I would invite, without a quorum, members of this board to join me in those discussions so that we can get to the next step. But I agree with many of the comments but if we're outsourcing it, you can't expect to outsource it for the same 50,000 for X number of years, right? If we increase it to 75, it's really just raising it. But the 100 allows us to say, here's the 50 that you've gotten. And you're giving your town manager the pair of eights that I can now say, okay, these are the things that we want. And I haven't formulated that conversation yet because I need more input from this board and what are the priorities, which we're talking about now, but as Stephen mentioned, perhaps a part-time person that is 100% dedicated on bringing new businesses in, for example, without changing the model that has been serving us well with the one individual. That's just one idea. There are others, but we didn't have time to present that to you as part of the budget. We had to come to you with the conceptual idea that even though they only asked for 50, that's clearly not gonna work. And 75 doesn't get us there either, frankly. So
but the Main Street Partnership's a bigger entity.
Yeah,
A lot of towns
Connecticut
have
Main
them
Street.
in Connecticut, so what is Main Street's bandwidth to add another person or kind of beholden to us and that larger entity, I guess is my question.
I think what Mark alluded to, there is a MOU which we had the last go around, but we had a temporary town manager who was great.
Yeah.
But nobody wanted to come up with the black and white, this is the path forward. So they basically just truncated the whole document to the bare necessities where the expectational are minimalistic and there was no funding further than the base. I think Mark's approach of put the 50 as the base and 50 as let's come up with a MOU, which I'll even step back from being whoever's the liaison in those meetings, to find out what it's worth. But I think if we're gonna make economic development, I haven't heard anyone come out with Plan B. This is our only plan, and I think we have to fund it if this is the trajectory we're on. And I appreciate that Mark brought up fine, give them the 50 as the base, that's all they had in the past, they'll make do. But to stifle the program in its entirety by not having $50,005 is just unrealistic. We need to do economic development, and we have proven over and over we can't do it in-house. To answer your question about the Simsbury Main Street, there is a National Main Street Board. Simsbury was the first main street in the state of Connecticut. They've continually won awards for their innovation. So is there a model? Yes. Simsbury Main Street has constantly recreated that model further and better. So we should be proud of what we have in our Main Street. Are there other Main Streets? Yes, some Rotary clubs are more successful than other Rotary clubs. So it's almost irrelevant. They don't work as a unit. Each Main Street is unique.
So they're not beholden to the
No.
larger.
There is no
Okay.
bylaws of a national organization.
Everybody ready?
Could I just wrap up?
Oh,
Sorry.
good,
And I-
because I'm ready to vote.
I know you are, but I think this is an important one because I think the reality is we're all in support of both the economic development and at this moment in support of Simsbury Main Street because they've been in support of the town. I don't have a request in front of me, Stephen, which you were on the board for and you're a member of this board now. And I highly respect that. But it's really important for us to see that, like you said, the plan. And if we had that plan to consider, that would make an increase all that much easier. And I'm not trying to discount the realities that they're doing an excellent job, and that Sarah specifically is doing an excellent job for our businesses in this community. But I was told by her that they weren't seeking an increase. And so that's the reason why I've made the motion today, and no other reason, and not to be insulting. It's not insulting for this town and its taxpayers to fund $50,000 for this work. I think it's excellent. Let's continue the conversation and find out what are the unmet needs that they need in order to be successful in being the only economic driver in this town beyond the Granby Simsbury Chamber of Commerce. So that's the reason why I made the motion, and I hope others support it as well.
So just for clarification, you're saying don't fund, cause I was saying have it be a contingency, which would be part of our budget. Otherwise, we're kicking this a year until we could possibly get additional funding for economic development. As Mark said, we're putting it in a contingency fund, which I think is meeting halfway. And if they don't perform according to the MOU that whomever comes up with, they don't get those funds and they're going to reserves.
I'll say, Stephen, that if you're telling me that nothing more can happen unless there's that additional money, that gives me more concern. So I'll just start where I'm at and liking Simsbury Main Street because they're doing good work, but I don't think that we're bent over a barrel on this. I think that there's an opportunity here to work together and create a plan.
Okay, I've said my piece, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, so all those in favor of flat funding Main Street as Kevin presented, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's two. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Well, you're, the yays are,
I'll say nay.
okay, so that does not pass. So it currently is in the budget at $100,000 unless someone wants to make a motion for a different amount of 75.
After all that, I'm.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot.
I'd like
Okay.
to make a motion that we amend it to include the contingency, the $50,000 contingent upon the agreement.
Okay,
I'll second that.
if we have to, sure. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And all those abstained or?
No, I said yeah.
Okay, so, pardon me?
It's the same levy, so it's not a change.
Okay. So where are we now, Mark? We did all the, are there any other?
Did we get the splash pad? Are we all?
We're not done, we haven't done any.
We got it.
Sure we got that.
I got a 6-year-old very excited about this thing and she'll
Oh, you're biased.
be able to be 10 until she gets there.
So if there's no other proposed changes to operating, is kind of what I'm thinking right now, we can move on. Under the, does that sound good, Melissa? If we're done, like going through operating, so we can move on now to capital. But we did not, and then I think when we go to capital, we should start with the discussion item
Amy, is that with the about the CNR, the traditional payback, and you could kind of go through that, cause won't that help us kind of figure out where we're going?
Yeah, I think Mark had something for that, but
Okay,
Before
okay.
you move off of operating,
Yeah.
you on Saturday had discussed during your outside agency discussion, one of the requests was from the Historical Society in regards to the planning of 250th anniversary of the founding of the nation.
Yep.
And you all had potentially had a thought of in lieu of that request, putting some funds aside for that planning.
In the
And I-
CNR.
Yeah, okay, well, wherever
Yeah.
it makes sense. And
Yep.
I don't think we heard an amount, and I don't know if it, depending on the amount, it could be something we add to the operating instead, so I just wanted to bring that up.
So I'll speak on that, I was gonna talk about it later, but I was thinking of doing like in the CNR, I don't know if that's appropriate, cause it's only for 2 years tops, right? Cause once we get, hopefully, unless there's another pandemic, and we don't have the 350th till whatever. Well, I'm just saying it's a 2-year outlay that we don't know what's needed. Stop.
I guess it would be helpful if we came up with what level of funding
I
you're
was
looking
thinking,
to
so
give.
I'll just throw out what I was thinking, because I don't know what their need is at this point in time. And I don't wanna be too cheap, but I also know that there's grants funding out there and there's a bunch of organizations that are gonna be part of this and we're just going to have a seat at the table, but if there's any events that need to be partnered with Parks and Rec or any other departments, I was thinking of a 2,500 over 2 years. I know that doesn't sound like very much, but you know, if we do 2,500 this year, which is not even 2026 yet, to have them, they come to us for some seed money, we have that there. And then if next year there's a, you know, something we need to fund, we can bring it back. That's just what I was thinking, whether that's appropriate or not.
so for CNR, it'd have to be over 10,000.
Oh.
But I mean, I don't think if you wanted to add 2,500 to contingency for this year, it does nothing, so you can feel free to add it with no impact.
I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this, as long as if there's a need.
I think the town does need to obviously support the anniversary, but it would just be easier if you knew a plan and what the intention was at the moment, so I'm happy for us to put a little good faith, you know, we're behind it. But it'd be much easier if they came and asked, you know, if we get an idea of what their plan is. They don't even think they've formed a committee on it yet.
They're trying, so are you saying you want it in the contingency fund, like to have that as an option of an amount?
Or, you know, when they form their committee, can they come
ask
to
for
us
money.
and give us a presentation and we could do something for them?
Supplemental.
Oh yeah, we could do a supplemental.
I don't think we need to
Yeah.
add it at this time.
That's good, no, I didn't even think of supplemental, perfect. Okay. Alright, so we're moving to capital and, oh yeah, so Mark, do you wanna talk about the traditional payback or do we wanna just assume that we're gonna leave it in until we don't? Until the final.
Yes, so we're talking about the traditional payback to CNR. So I sent an email to all of you, it was on the same
Yeah.
email as the other six. So I think we did have some discussion about the impact of the operating, it's 60,000 this year, allows you to puts 300 to the good on CNR. This is, and we heard from the Board of Finance Chair on this is something that we agree needs more analysis at the Board of Finance level. So our recommendation is that this board passes it on to the next budget review entity, which is the Board of Finance. Our finance director would like the opportunity to flesh that out with the full Board of Finance. This was something that, you know, was recommended to help us in our hour of need. Again, reminding everybody what you already know, zero grand list growth, all of that, and it is, when we put the town manager's preliminary budget together, we didn't disturb many of the guardrails that are there, but this particular item has not been changed in some time. And it is definitely deserving of a analysis. And the question is that an analysis for this board or is it an analysis for the Board of Finance? My recommendation is that you adopt it and move it on to the Board of Finance and let them have that conversation because it is something that is important to them, an issue that they've kind of weighed in on informally. But our position is that we wanna give our finance director an opportunity to have those wider discussions with the Board of Finance as part of their budget approval process.
So I think that's fair, to see where, you know, the Board of Finance, you guys, I mean, you know, we know where Lisa was standing, but I think she liked the opportunity to work with you and seeing how that works. I did have a couple questions. Does the first of all, the 300, are we just right now looking at this as a one-off to see?
Great question for the Board of Finance. I mean, I'm looking at it as a one-off because we wouldn't be proposing it if we weren't in this need, so it's
Yep.
another one of those but-fors. I think the reason it hasn't been adjusted in the past was we haven't been in this position in the past, at least not recently. So I think the answer to that question is dependent upon the conversation with and the Board of Finance and their analysis. But certainly for me, it works on a perpetual basis. I don't have any fear of it. It's worked well at this level. To step it up a little, it certainly doesn't put us at any risk, nor does it adversely impact anything in my opinion. But I'm very deferential and respectful of you know, others may have different opinions about that. But my answer would be it can be perpetual, but I'm also more concerned about this year's budget cycle and you know, I think it should pass this board, let's put it that way.
Yep. Just a couple comments around that. If we leave that in, can we leave enough reserves in case it doesn't end up coming to fruition? Yeah, okay, great. And then we still have not yet, as a board, reviewed CNR items to see if there's any further cuts that we might wanna take out of the CNR. So, you know, that may help.
Or if you wanna use more reserves.
Or more reserves, correct. So wherever that goes, it may impact the amount, maybe it's whatever, just
Sure.
we haven't gotten there yet, so. But yeah, I think I don't know if we need to take a vote on that, are we all willing?
If we're not making changes, I don't think we need to make a vote.
Yeah,
But
no,
the
okay,
other
you're right, we
concerns that
don't.
members
So,
have
yes, we're all
Yep.
we're all good to have it move to the Board of Finance.
Thank you.
Okay. It's hard when we're not looking at the,
you got all the stuff, you got a big binder there.
I don't have my binder.
Here, you can use my
I
binder.
brought my own paper.
Let's get my notes, you can just
So
say
I
what
was
you know.
going to, I want these guys to help direct me, cause I
Yeah,
wanna.
what can we do?
Well, I was gonna move on to CIP items,
Great,
okay?
good.
And look at the budget and the CIP. Let me make sure my right copy here, this is last year's. Hold on, guys, I have multiple. What is the CIP?
Is she?
I know.
I don't have the
No.
pages memorized like Lisa.
I have my own CIP.
159.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for my CIP with my notes
No,
on.
actually, CIP actually starts on 158. I just flipped over to 159.
Sorry, guys.
I second 158.
CIP.
And then there's this red line diagram
So,
that you may wanna go.
Please stop.
huh? Alright, no, it's not for you, it's for me, I'm looking. No, I'm just saying, I had it, my notes on my CIP and I must have left it home, so I'm trying to pull it up online.
What stuff down there?
Huh?
On the floor.
I looked,
Oh, alright.
hope people don't care that we're this informal. What page is the CIP?
158.
158.
Thank you. Okay. Here it is, 160.
For those watching at home, 158.
It's 162 in the online PDF.
Oh, is it 160? Oh, right?
Okay, so
Well, right, and you're scrolling to 150, right, but it's printed 158.
give me a minute, I'm gonna just slow down for a minute here. Alright. Get myself ready and find the page, one page. Okay. So we didn't go through a couple of things, I wanted to ask Amy, Mark and Melissa.
So we have our reserves, right? Right now, most of the items in that sheet, can we put that over here so I could look at it too?
The one you told me you didn't
Yeah,
want?
that one. So we talked about a lot of these. There was a bunch of items that we wanted to kind of revisit because we didn't really go in detail on all of them, but there were some that warranted further discussion, right? And what I wanted to ask you is the new ads, which in the dark, which we talked about the other day, we have to include them with if we wanna move them forward, we have to vote favorably towards them. Okay,
I'm sorry, well,
any
go ahead.
anything that's new to the CIP that was not in the CIP last year. So that's where we're supposed to look at the CIP in a 2-year period. Because what we approved, we said this on Saturday, what we approved this year that is in 25-26 is gonna get moved to 24 to current.
So not necessarily, because like
Okay.
I said on Saturday, it's if the project is anywhere on the plan, as long as it was on the plan somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
You don't have to do that affirmative vote.
Okay, but I was saying though, whatever's in the 25-26 year is gonna move to the current year and will stay intact unless we add stuff.
Depends where we're at when we do budget development for next
So
year,
it doesn't-
so that's certainly where we start when we, but
Okay.
projects might move
So that's not a
around.
policy that 25-26 what we approve in this budget carries forward? Okay.
Helps us to anticipate all of that.
Yeah, I thought there was a policy, so maybe I made that
Oh,
up, but I did.
So the new guy.
Well, I guess. So alright, so the new items that are in the budget for this year. I guess we should look at those, right? Get those.
And you will have a motion later this evening to affirmatively add those specific projects, and then another motion to approve all of the year one projects. So that's what you're voting on tonight, is gonna be to vote on adding the new projects, and then inclusive of that, all of the year one projects.
And the new projects are the ones that are like bolded.
In bold.
Yeah, just clarifying,
And that's just a charter requirement.
yes.
Okay.
May I ask a couple of
Yeah, let's, go
broad
ahead.
questions?
Broad.
You know, when you look at this list, I'm struggling to understand if we were to approve it, what it does to the debt slope. And I'm just, you know, if we want to keep our debt service at 8.5, what do we have to do? I don't know if you can sort of guide us in what we would have to do to keep it there. And just
Looking for an amount.
kind of, and how, you know, what can we do to also cut our debt service for next year?
So
Cause right now projecting, right, like a 1 point, I just wanna make sure I'm reading it right, so next year it's projected another debt increase of 1.1. So is there anything we can do also to get that number down for next year?
So there's multiple options on what we can do. I had reached out to our bond advisor, he gave us 4 different options, they all have different impacts. So that's actually the crux of the conversation with the Board of Finance members prior to taking a position on where our reserve should be at. There's one option where we could offset like a $500,000 each year, and then we still have an impact to the operating. There's another option where we can offset about 1.3 million and then another million in the out years. So multiple options, which is why I wanted the final guidance from this board on the operating so that I can put together some planning and some scenarios for the Board of Finance to see what direction they wanna go in, and then we can finalize the plan for the out years.
Okay, so back to our graph and trying to stay within guidelines of keeping it under 8.5.
Are you saying
What is it-
8.5 debt service or 8.5 million debt service
The
payment?
percent.
The percent, okay.
So what is approving this? We approved this whole piece of paper, what is that, what does
Yeah,
that do?
that was my question, like, is where we are in the number, sorry, cause I wanna ask a similar question, where you are in the number that you gave us last time after the operating with the $500 increase per household, is that inclusive of everything without removing these redlined items? Okay, so that's all in with all of these.
Right.
So your proposal to redline these and remove them say we said we're gonna adopt this exact proposal, where does this take us?
So that's not our proposal, that's what the Board of Finance at their last meeting had said to keep debt service at $8.5 million per year. We would have to cut all of that, and we
to
still
get
wouldn't
to-
be at 8.5, we'd be at, I think, 8.8 million.
And so just to jump in here, if you wanted to spend additional capital reserves to bring it, I mean, that was, I guess, where maybe Heather was going, in order to meet the Board of Finance guidance and stay under the line, the red in there shows you how drastic,
Got it.
draconian, almost impossible that is.
Don't do
Any
it.
other word you got?
Don't do it.
I was like,
Is there another?
That said,
what are we
you know,
voting on?
I will tell you that that's what we need to do. You could switch it to unfunded in the out years and just indicate that the project's there and it's not funded. And check the box on Board of Finance guidance. You're not approving a plan that puts you above the line. But you are telling the public that these are things that are being discussed. The capital plan is important from a public and transparency, you know. I would just suggest that if you wanna stay under the line in the out years, you switch it to unfunded. And you know, where is it written that you've gotta have a funding source for something that you're not planning to do for 4 years? Right? We don't even have a grant writer. So I think I'm trying to find a compromise that abides the guidance we're getting from Board of Finance to not increase debt service beyond this line, but at the same time present you a budget that presents you with the scope and magnitude of all of the infrastructure projects that are needed in the town. Right? So had I submitted a town manager budget that kept you under the line, you wouldn't have seen half of this. Now you've seen it, and this is the conversation that we're having, which I think is a really important conversation to have. So for this board, use reserves if you wanna do it right away, pay particular attention to year one, a little less attention to year two, and in my opinion, no attention to the out years at this point because of the challenges that we're facing right now. But I think we've resolved the operating problems, so rest easy. Because, you know, staying under the line is fantastic, but nobody's proposing that we go over the line this year. It goes over the line in the out years.
So let me can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So are you saying that anything other than 25-26 in those out years, you're gonna just say there's no funding source until we decide to prioritize those? Is that what you just said?
That's essentially what I said. I think there was a prioritization effort made for year one and conversations around year two. This goes back to when Lee was interim. So there have been discussions about prioritization. Some of the bonding requests go to projects that need additional funding, like the Flower Bridge, for example. You know, so you could use reserves to do that and not bond for it. Those, I think the decision for the board tonight really should be what additional reserves could be used or should be used. And I guess, yes, just switch it to unfunded and have this conversation external to the budget process because it gets bogged down in the when you try to do capital with operating, you know, so.
So I'm in favor of using reserves because if we're gonna get an influx of over $2 million with year-end savings.
Well, I would agree with you, except
Right.
that in the
So-
face of, go ahead.
Well, I'm just gonna say, and so, you know, we still don't know if we're including all of these, if there's any that we can't really afford if we don't wanna bond for them. And then I guess who best determines which goes from reserves and which goes to bonding? Is that Amy and Melissa's job? And how to make that work?
Yes.
If we can zero in on what we feel we need, there may be some maybe that are nice to have that if we had enough reserves we might do, so I don't know where that line comes into play.
If you, my suggestion, and we're good on time, it's 8:00.
Yeah.
If you could give us guidance now on
Priorities.
what you might wanna cut.
Yep.
And then if we could take a 10-minute recess and
Yep.
I could circle with staff on the question of available reserves for things that you don't wanna cut, we might get there.
Okay, and I do wanna ask, you said not to look at 25-26, but when I look at 25-26, I see a $14.3 million bonding on all those projects, which that can't happen. We know that, you know, so I guess how do we leave everything in there and then have to go through even more pain next year?
I think some of the things could be cut right if you wanna do that, and it's not that time consuming to peel out some of the bigger
From next year,
problems. Just go ahead and do it, or move it to
or move it out,
move it to year 5, but
yeah.
I think the most efficient use of this board's time would be to first tell us if there's some things that you just wanna cut,
Okay,
and then let us circle the wagons on that reserve question a little bit in light of what you've done with operating. You did just use some reserves for operating. You're willing to use more for capital, is what I'm hearing.
We use what, 700,000?
The preliminary was 500, you put another 200 in. If I have that right, so you've got wiggle room there,
Plus the 150.
plus the 150. And so you're down to whatever Amy's number was, 2.3, which was,
what do we have to, I heard this on Saturday, I just have to ask, do we have to account for the buses from the Board of Ed? Cause
Was
they
that
said they were
500?
gonna put that in, is that reserves?
I mean, I haven't heard anything as far as the buses. I was just gonna wait and talk to the Board of Finance. I think that was a recommendation from the chair, but
But they,
it could get in there by way of them if they wanted
But
to.
if we were to follow that and the traditional payback didn't work out, so that's another 300,000, so that's 800,000 more from reserves that we would potentially.
so, yeah, so do we say we have those or we don't have those when we go through this scenario? That's your question, right? Right, I don't-
you mean the 500 for the buses?
Yes,
Plus
we
the
don't,
plus the potential 300 for the
I
traditional
would
payback.
I would say if you're confident we can convince the Board of Finance to let us increase that traditional payback, then deduct the 500 from your declining balance of reserve. But you're right, I would be a little concerned about 800.
yeah. So,
So
okay.
then what does that leave us against for our CIP?
We need to circle the wagons on that, if you
Oh, on the 10-minute break.
yeah, on the 10-minute break and give you that guidance as quickly as we could. I don't wanna speak for staff on that. But it'd be helpful before we break if you could just clear the low-hanging fruit for us in terms of anything you wanna cut.
Yep.
So I'd recommend maybe when we get to general understanding of what this is, we can do the break before we do the final votes and we can actually get the real numbers. Cause I think that we're still talking conceptually and we'll use that information to catch something that we might not have thought about, if that works.
Yeah, so are we just gonna make suggestions here
I think
without,
that we should, and then we can get the final
Yeah.
numbers from them.
but no, I don't wanna vote, we're gonna vote later on them, right? Are we just gonna put
It's
out?
okay with me.
Can I ask a question, Wendy?
Yes, you may.
Prior to us going through, we have Jason here, I was wondering if he could speak to some of the
Yeah, that would be great.
I understood there were questions about
There were.
some of the
Yes.
items.
Do you wanna do that before the?
I'd love to do it so Jason
Yeah, because
doesn't have to
those
spend
are on
that.
my
Yeah.
list.
As would
Just-
Yes.
You don't wanna stay, you wanna hang out with us?
Sure.
Did you wanna talk about the district flooring, the critical need for that?
Yes, so, I mean, do you have any specific questions
Yeah,
or just?
well, I'll ask my question. I'm looking at a tight budget here, with $1.1 million going to the roofing for Tooten Hills. And I'm looking at the district flooring, which is a new ask, so we all have to approve it for this current year, with a second payment out in 26-27, and I'm asking if we could delay that. Why do we need to start that new project this year when it's a tight year?
In lieu of the types of cuts that we're doing, I would say it can be pushed a year. I mean, it's not, the carpet is in bad shape, the seating is in bad shape. It's been in bad shape since the last 3 years at least. That could go another year out.
Well, it's, okay, but next year is probably gonna be a bad year
Right.
too, so it might just go out, so that's one thing that I would,
So the carpet in.
this is the flooring
This is the-
improvements,
right.
$250.
And you're looking for what facilities, Diana, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Like which facilities are we, like district flooring improvements, is that like across each school?
Okay, I was thinking the amphitheater.
Yeah, that's why when you said carpet and seating, that's what I thought, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I thought you meant, yeah.
Sorry,
Okay,
Is this the
She's
lighting?
asking about the.
No.
Flooring that you
It's
paid.
just the
No,
floor.
no, this is the, when you said 250, that's a completely
Yeah,
different
250
item, yeah.
district council.
The amphitheater and stage was for $400,000.
Yeah, that's another
This is the
question.
flooring for 250.
Yeah.
The flooring for 250 is more in lieu of, we've been trying to do these types of projects under CNR. And we have not been able to keep up. I've seen that some of the every other year recurring funding sources have done better in getting their projects accomplished. So that's what I was trying to implement to get that started. If this is not the year to get that started,
Right.
then we can go on looking at CNR and other methods to do that.
Okay.
Is there anything that's unsafe in any of the repairs that you're planning to make, or is it these are good to do replacements that you're hoping to take?
The true safety hazards we're addressing in patches, it looks worse and worse with each year, but yeah, I wouldn't say this is particularly it's aimed at preventing the safety issues before they show up.
And what is the condition of the roof? Is that a need? Did we go over that one?
Yeah,
Somebody did.
the roof is more of a timeline issue and more of a concern that the big ticket items get bunched up when we look at Henry James, which is also gonna need a roof in the future as well for significantly more dollars. But is it leaking? No. One portion of it was from 1995, so it is definitely long in the tooth for a project that should take place, but can this be pushed off? I would have to say yes, it can.
What kind of roofing is it on Toon House? I'm sorry, but I didn't know that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it EDPM or?
It's going to be, there's two segments.
What is it now, tar and stone?
One is stone, yeah.
What are the other ones then?
It's one is stone and one I believe is EPDM, unless I'm mixing it up with three other roof projects that I'm working on.
So when you say that could be pushed out, like realistically, what are you looking at? Like, I know you'd like to get it done now, but if you're saying, okay, maybe it could wait.
Well, like I say, it's not, we don't have significant leak issues there.
We don't want it.
Henry James has had more leak issues and that's on the one that's up and coming. But if we have to push it out another year or two, I can see doing that. I mean, we do have an operating budget item for roof repairs. And on some years, it's does well and on other years we get hit. And this last year was actually a, knock on wood, a pretty easygoing roof year. 2 years ago was a really difficult one. It's sort of, I don't have Tom's crystal ball for that.
So what you're saying is if we do not do it now, then it bunches up into when we have to bond for Henry James.
That's my only concern is that there, when you look at the 6-year plan, there's just a lot of.
Well, yeah, I was gonna add, so I'm hoping that this is the most important roof, I would assume, in this list, right? Because if you did move it out 2 years, you're gonna be on the same wavelength as Central School's roof replacement in 26-27. Henry James, I'm looking for where that one is. Can't see.
Right, based on.
Is there
Based
any
on-
benefit in doing the roofs of the schools at the same time? I mean, no. No? Cause you don't.
But if these move over 1 year, this just keeps it consistent because it's another $1 million next year
Well, that's what I'm
for the other part of Toon
Yeah, that's what I'm
Hills.
saying, I'm not quite,
Oh, no, that's the stadium, my bad.
No, but there was the Henry James roof there is, so it does spread it out, that's the question, that's the
Henry
key.
James, yeah, is
Is the
in
next year
25, 26
$2,500.
and 27, 28.
2.5 million.
Yeah. So if we push it out a year, we're bumping up against that and now we've
Yes.
even a larger
So that's-
pill to swallow.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, Mark said we don't have to fund anything.
What do you mean?
It was a joke, it was a joke for us.
Too soon.
So I have a question, or are we okay with the roof questions? Okay, I had a question on the the auditorium amphitheater. Because I don't see, I was assuming that the amphitheater is way down the hall from the auditorium, so they're really two projects,
Yes.
right? So they're just merged to bond for them, right? So that, I don't know it sounds like the auditorium is a higher priority potentially than the amphitheater because the auditorium is used for theater groups and things like that with the heating and the lights, and I've heard it's very uncomfortable, although I've never been on stage. So that's one thing that I think it should be separate, but then it falls into the CNR budget, right? So one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is possible, so you can humor me, whoever's, this might be Tom Roy humoring me, I don't know who. The Eno also was looking for lighting and curtains, and that got cut out of our CNR, that was about 100,000 or something. Is there a way to bump out the amphitheater and combine the auditorium at the high school with the Eno? Because you're doing the same function at both places, is there a contractor that could do both and just put those two projects together? I don't know.
This one, Jason? Can phone a friend?
That's how my mind works, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say, as much as it sounds like bundling is the option,
Okay.
it's not a progressive commercial, bundling's not gonna help us here. What they would be looking for at the high school would be, cutting edge modern stage lighting that would be really
Not
useful, impressive. What we're honestly, sorry Diana, looking for at SCTV is lighting that is safe and function, and a
correct.
curtain that meets code.
Correct. I'd be looking for those too, Tom.
Okay. So
Tom,
I know.
I'd be thrilled with those, quite honestly.
So how much is, so the question that I would have is, what is the pricing of the auditorium improvements versus the amphitheater? Is it worthy of being alone on the CIP?
The stage project is the beginning of the lighting project. So in the amphitheater, that would be about 265,000. I was looking to package that and to get the stage lighting started. I mean, I could probably spend 300,000 on the lighting piece alone on the.
Yeah, and so you're not even looking at sound in the auditorium, this is just for lighting improvements, which are needed.
And one of the problems with what we're doing is moving from the type of stage lighting now, which is basically incandescent bulb based, to LED based, means that not only the light fixtures go away, but the equipment that they're mounted to and plug into above the the ceiling goes away, and then the wiring back to the control board goes away, and then the control board goes away. One of the issues is traditionally, all you had was the ability to make things dimmer or bright with a slider. And then if you wanted a color, you put something in front of it. These LED bulbs, there's a control for multiple colors, there's a control for the dimness, brightness. So they require multiple wiring running back and a different kind of board altogether. So
Just to clarify, when each time you wanna change the color on the light that exists currently, you have to buy a new gel, and the gels only last so long. So it's a cost each time you wanna change the color on a light. For each show, they buy a whole bunch of gels.
and that's because the heat literally burns through them.
Did you?
Can I
I'm just clarifying, I'm not,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm still not clear on the amphitheater
Yep.
versus auditorium.
Auditorium is lighting and
It's light.
Yeah, the auditorium is
curtains,
lighting,
isn't it?
it's a
No
lighting
curtains?
improvement.
Oh, where did I make the curtains up in there?
That was Eno had the
I know.
curtain and the lighting.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
there-
what's the amphitheater? Is that lighting
that's-
as well?
No, that's a carpet that's threadbare and used as a cafeteria, so in tough
So
shape.
roughly how much is which one?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I asked them, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but we
Did
didn't
I
get an
hear it?
answer, no. No.
Of the
Alright, her question, again.
260.
of the 400,000, 265 was the amphitheater
Oh,
at
amphitheater's
135.
260.
Was the start for the stage lighting.
Oh.
And forgive my naivety, but when I was a student, the amphitheater was not used, which was just like 5 years ago, give or take. The amphitheater wasn't very well used. Is it used often nowadays?
To be honest, in my role, I'm not the best person qualified
Fair enough.
to answer
I just-
that. My layman's opinion is I do see it actively used when I'm there, but again,
Okay, fair enough. More exposure than I have, to be frank.
Okay.
It was a slate roof on the building then when you were.
They just thatched it.
And just for context, the reason the 265 number is high for a flooring project. One of the biggest components of that is an asbestos abatement project that's part of that. There's nothing actively friable there now, there's no immediate concern, but the mastic and the glue underneath the carpet when we start pulling it up is basically gonna have to be done in containment, so.
When were you anticipating the project?
It
To get started this summer?
it would be a this summer project, we could do that.
And the lighting would also start in the summer? You're saying you wanted to get a start on it. Is the rest of the lighting in another line item?
What I was hoping to do with capital this year was to get the project rolling and then use CNR.
Okay. So we could, if we wanted to just fund the amphitheater, we could just leave the lighting for CNR for another time for the BOE. If it doesn't need to start today, just as to put that out there.
Sure.
Or fund it through another source, right?
Right, I mean, there are no good options with this.
Okay, so I wanted to circle back to the splash pad. I just
Are we done with BOE? 'Cause it
oh yeah,
needs to go home.
are we done with BOE? No, are we?
If I could just make one plug, the item on there that I would strongly encourage you to maintain is the $350,000 for the network infrastructure fund.
And we did discuss.
If only because that's related, in this iteration of it, we're looking at a safety and security system to improve.
Okay, good. So I think we're done with the BOE and we wanted to talk this through before we go on our break. We wanted to just touch back on the splash pad, right? So the $150,000 this year, that could potentially be something that we use reserves for if we have room in reserves. The one thing that I was wondering, Tom, is if you've got the 150 for design. Well, we could move it out. We could move the 150 out to next year and then we could move the 950 out to the next year, right, and push it off if we wanted to. Is there an option to fund the 150, say we did have reserves for the 150, to come up with the plan and design and even other potential uses for what's at Memorial Pool, where the pool will be gone? I mean, not replace the pool, but is there any other option, design beside the splash pad that we could do up there?
I think the option, Dave Bush made a point before. If you're gonna replace, if you're gonna close it,
Yeah.
close it. That's what it's gonna be. We'll have to figure things out. We'll probably hit a revenue loss with camp stuff to do, cause we can't move it to Simsbury Farms and put 110 kids in the pool during public swim. It just won't work or it's not safe. But if you're gonna replace, I think I said here the other day, option A, close. Option B, replace the pool for 2 to 3 million, probably closer to 3. Option C, put the splash pad in, so you still have that aquatic feature there. And again, I tried to make the point that it's probably gonna get used a lot more than it is now, cause it'll be more of a community gathering place. It's accessible for not only disabled persons, but it's also for grandparents during the summer bringing their grandkids, who may be caregivers for their grandkids, they'll be able to take them in there just like they would one of our accessible playgrounds, like at Rotary Park. As far as other options there, I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to put some kind of next to the splash pad, maybe some kind of outdoor play, like a little play area. We have that couple pieces of equipment from the 1970s up there now that we'd like to get rid of and move that wooded area into something, but there's really not another feature that lends itself well to that spot. Like I trying to be persuasive in the fact that we have everything up there we need to make this project succeed. We have the parking, we have the utilities, we have all the infrastructure we need. Hopefully we can reuse as much of that bathhouse and get dual uses out of it with not only the splash pad use, but the area for public restrooms for the baseball and softball games that take place up there. I mean, I'm not sure what other option maybe you have something, you guys are thinking of something that I'm not thinking of, but the master plan, did recommend that we replace the pool with a splash pad, and that was a thoughtful process with input from the public and the users up there to come up with that, users and staff. But I can't think of another project that makes as much sense up there as a splash pad. I mean, again, you have that option to just do nothing. As soon as that that shell of the pool caves in, we don't have a pool anymore, and I wouldn't recommend spending $3 million to replace it. So we're trying to be planning ahead, so when, you know, we're trying to get to that point before the shell caves in and we're not without a pool, you know, come, you know, when they go to fill the pool up in May, at the end of May, that the walls collapse. We wanna replace that before that happens.
So I appreciate that, you know, so like I said, if we move it out, then your problem is that you're still operating the pool and putting in the maintenance money to operate the pool until we shut it down, kind of?
Lifeguard.
Yeah, I mean, we're still gonna be incurring the cost for the seasonal staff, we're still gonna be you know, the pool, the shell is leaking now.
Okay.
Dave may have been a little enthusiastic when he said we're losing $10,000 a year in water. We probably pay $10,000 to $15,000 a year in water. We would want some water either way, but we are replacing water, you know, to the tune of, you know, 6 to 10 inches of water a day that comes out of that pool, and it just goes in, you know, it's going through the shell. The deck, you know, the concrete deck is in disrepair, the building is in disrepair.
Okay.
At some point, we that pool will get to the point where we can't use it any longer. I don't recommend spending a couple $100,000 to fix it, to Band-Aid it for another decade. That doesn't make any sense.
And so just one more thing I'm gonna say, if I may. So I was a bit up and down on the splash pad. And you know, I could maybe get around funding if we could not bond this year because we don't, you know, I don't know where that falls into play. And the problem that I see is that originally was the $950, next year it's $1 million in a year where the bonding is we're kind of through the roof. But it has been proposed and presented that we could say that half of that about is gonna be grant funded. And then the impact to the CIP isn't as big next year. So I don't know, I don't have an answer right now, but it's just, if anybody else has comments.
Well, for it or against it, whatever you think will help. Do we still have to do design work for the bathhouse regardless if we don't do anything there, or?
Well, if you close the pool, you don't need a bathhouse anymore.
Okay.
I mean, you have to make the decision whether you wanna renovate that building.
Unless you
for
want
restrooms
facilities up there though, right? We need some sort of restroom facilities, or you would hope to, or do we not need them at all?
Would hope to, yeah. I mean, if the decision is made to close the pool, I would hope that there would be some consideration to renovating the bathhouse so that there would be public restrooms up there. I mean, the building you have bones up there. You might as well utilize that than build as new. At some point, we should have public accessible restrooms in all of these major recreation facilities. This one, you're kind of a third of the way there already.
So I look at this from my perspective, thank you for that, I look at this from my perspective as an opportunity to assess the site and see what the future use is, cause we know that the pool is not sustainable and that's a problem. And so we need to do something. And it's not a small amount, but this is one of those things where it's a current facility, it's having good use, and it would be a loss to the community to not assess it, and it's not gonna be easier to study or address it in the future, so it's hard to hit, but I'll be supporting it.
Okay, that sounds good.
And I also plan to support it. I think that pushing it out just increases the cost. We are spending a lot of money on water, lifeguards, and at the end of the day, it's design work. It allows us to potentially move forward with something there.
Because after the design,
Since I've been on this board, it's on every year.
and right now, we're just approving design work, we're not approving the final project.
Correct,
the
yeah, I
cost
mean,
of the final
my-
project.
Effectively,
Yeah, I'd hope to come back to you with a design that we're gonna do the input, I hope some of you would participate in the input process, the town manager, we get the public involved. And come back to you with a design that everybody feels good about and a cost estimate from the architect that we all feel good about, and we can go forward and be enthusiastic and not have to, not be having this discussion where we're what are we gonna do? You see something, you really want it, and that you make that choice then.
He's
My
gonna
other
come back with
concern is-
elementary students with balloons.
My other concern is the potential
Don't put it
revenue
past
loss.
me.
What's that?
I said my other concern would be the potential
Good point.
revenue loss for Parks and Rec. Which then that creates another problem for us in years to come.
I'll just to clarify, that pool sits in the general fund, so you'd actually have a loss of the general fund with the revenue. You'd wanna bring that revenue back. So the camp revenue goes to Simsbury, to the recreation fund. Memorial pool admissions, swim lesson revenue, that goes to the general fund. It's just, don't ask me why it's like that, it's just the way it's been set up. So you'd actually hit a loss to the general fund. What I'm proposing is that we do that admission, the pool, the splash pad admission in the future, that admission and that staff will still come out of the general fund, but it'll be hopefully be profitable in the general fund, or at least a break even.
So I have one commitment that if we fund it, opening day, like at the playground, we all have to go and play in the splash pad.
Splash pad.
Like the opening scene of Friends, the title is.
Yes, yes. We could each be one,
You get a
because there's
umbrella?
6 of us.
Okay.
Okay, alright, so I think, unless there's anybody else who has,
One quick question, I know that Mark had said that, I'm for the splash pad and moving forward the 150. My only concern would be the 950. I know that you had mentioned that where you were previously went to 3 million, it started off as $1 million.
That was the pool house, that's exactly what Tom was saying, not
Okay,
the
that's not the
splash pad.
splash pad, okay.
I wish we had done the splash pad.
Okay, and you feel pretty confident about?
Yeah.
As confident as I can be right now, I mean, like we've seen everywhere, costs are going,
Yeah.
like Scott, that's why I think I think when the engineering department really said, let's get the design and get that cost, really locked in. I think it's a smart way to go. I mean, I don't wanna sit here and guarantee you it's gonna be, I'm gonna come back with a 950 request next year. A lot of that's gonna come from what the site surveyed is, what the architect says, how much that building's how much renovation that building's actually gonna need, but also the kind of splash pad we want. We might have to come back to you and say, we have an option A and an option B, where one is, 5,000 square feet and one is 2,000 square feet or something. I mean, we may have to make that adjustment and make that decision, but I do believe, we pursue that grant for 500,000 and get that cost down, and hopefully, we're not coming back with the full 950 and somewhere significantly less.
And the 950 proposed, like estimated, is inclusive of splash pad and the renovation to the building and the bathrooms and the
That is my hope, yeah.
And the grant.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, Farmington's doing their splash pad for 565.
How many square feet is it?
You're gonna ask me that. I don't know the exact number. I know Canton's was significantly smaller than that. What I have in mind in my vision is what I sent to you in that packet the other day, those type of things. It's more of a playground. It's not it's not a couple of elements in a space like this. I mean, we want something that I think we can all be proud of and that people would wanna come to, so.
Okay, just one more time for the town hall rooftop units. The question I was gonna ask is that's separated from town hall renovations, which I don't even see, I don't think there's a number on here. So that would have to, is that just cause it doesn't have to go with the town hall renovations and we need to get the.
It needs to happen.
Okay.
It's the town hall renovation seems to be always 5 or 6 or more years out. And if we don't invest in the rooftop units, the building could become very uncomfortable very quickly.
Okay, can we build a splash pad?
Out front,
Town hall.
multiple locations.
Exactly.
We actually, on very hot days, when it gets above, say 92, 93 degrees, we literally put a sprinkler on the roof and sprinkle water onto the air conditioning units so they'll function.
So cool off.
Physics.
Okay.
So if you wanna go up there and play.
They have a splash pad there.
We can add, what is it though, what year is it?
It's 26.
The Stoddard Dam.
Those highly efficient rooftop units there too, Tom, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's 171.
I tell you what, the units up there, believe it or not, are oversized, which sounds like a great idea, except it would be
No, it's less efficient.
it's like having a V8 golf cart.
Yeah.
So even in here the other day, when it comes on with such force, that you feel it and then it shuts off and the temperature changes is not what a modern system should do. Very frustrating for those of us who get the calls.
Is it
about hot
individually
buildings.
zoned then when the new thing, just like this?
There are several zones throughout the building, and what's interesting is the zones are vertical.
Are we on that? I don't know, I was looking at that.
Is there anything we're looking to take out then?
Just,
We didn't do CNR.
we haven't done CNR yet, but we don't, that's smaller, right, like, pardon me?
CNR?
Yeah.
I think there's 50 projects on.
Do you wanna talk about those now before you go back, or do we wanna still take a break?
She wants you to vote so that she can leave.
Okay, well,
But yes, I think we should do it now,
I don't think
Wendy.
that's gonna happen
We should do it
in
now.
5 minutes.
We should do it now.
The CNR?
Yes.
Okay, so we're moving away from CIP, so you have an idea of where we are with CIP, correct?
Do we have an idea? What is the?
I haven't heard anybody else,
I didn't hear any cuts.
yeah, I didn't hear anybody.
So you're.
No, we did, we suggested moving out moving out the
Board of Ed,
Should just, it's not a cut. If you wanna vote on it, we should.
Oh.
Or we can do it in the end when we do the
well, that's
whole
what I
thing.
that's what I was gonna say, Melissa, would you wanna know now if we're gonna, I could make a motion to cut the district flooring from 24-25 and start it in 26-27. Cause then we'll make it again later, right? Well, we wouldn't make it again later, so we should make it now, cause we don't bond.
You wanna know what we're looking to cut so you can go away and come back with projections. That's so taking out the,
Yeah, so
so we
let
don't have to make the motion now, it's so she wants to take out this flooring,
Oh, you're,
push it out.
who's asking?
Right?
So, well, I'm saying somebody said if we vote on it now, but if we're not gonna bond for it, we need to know that now, so you don't add that to the total bonding, right?
We just wanna make sure that you don't plan to use reserves. And we'll circle the wagon on that, but if you've got any cuts that you definitely want out, let us know. If there's consensus on any cuts.
Well, I think I'm saying there is. I'm asking to cut from 24-25 the district flooring improvements.
Okay.
So is there a motion for
I'll
that?
make a motion, so
Okay.
Is there anybody that would second that?
Sure.
No, maybe not.
Second, so we can
Okay.
discuss.
Any discussion on that?
You're just saying move it up 1 year, right?
I'm saying take it out of 24-25 and start the project in 26-27.
it's scheduled for every other year. So it's just sort of getting it to a year that's not as,
Critical.
yeah, we're in dire straits for the next 24 months. That gives us some breathing room.
And Jason didn't sound like it had to happen,
No,
so
as long as
Jason,
he
you
gets
should have
his
said
network,
something a
he
little.
said he wants
Right.
network only.
They probably don't like you here. So that's the motion. Was that a discussion? Did you?
I think we discussed it.
Or is there any more discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of cutting the district flooring improvement for the current year, leave it in for the out years, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So did everybody vote to cut
Yes.
that? Okay,
And I
Bart,
think
don't hear everything.
the only other thing is, do we wanna move the splash pad memorial pool redesign to reserves or keep it as bond?
Well, that's gonna be discussed later, isn't it? Or did you?
I think the 150 is in reserves under the email that I sent earlier.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Sorry, I was looking at, I got confused because now I'm looking at this and it says bond.
Just leave it in.
What are you leaving in?
So
Can I ask
this
about the dam?
Emails when we bumped it again.
Sure.
Is it, I'm trying to remember where, I know we did the dam tour, where's Stoddard Dam?
This was West Mountain Road.
Yeah,
On Onion Mountain Park.
the tour, right?
So is this, the dam's being repaired or is it going to, are you
Right.
breaching it? What?
We're taking it down, and it's a several year process that is orders of magnitude less than reconstruction.
Gotcha, okay, I was trying to recollect, I remember that discussion, okay.
Need a fishing venue, okay, so
Do we need to discuss the PAC, just as far as, is this the time to do that?
well, it would be because we kind of said we wanted to fund the reserves
Yeah.
on Saturday.
I think the PAC's a good idea, I think it brings a lot of benefits. Just to put on the record that we should work towards a MOU that works for everything, works well for everyone, make sure athletics gets the fields.
And we did say that we would like to make sure that the money comes in before we do any actual work on the project by them, so we probably need, that'll be the job to get a schedule of payments or before to make the money that's missing, which is a chunk.
Right.
We talked about that a little on
Yes.
Saturday, there's $500,000 that they've gotta tell us how we're gonna get before this project starts, right? And you're working on the DECD proposed budget, which will have to include all this. Correct? Like the funding sources and all that kind of stuff?
We have that listed out right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have in there the specific mechanisms of, for example, when and how they're gonna make payments to us, it's just what is gonna be done through fundraising.
Okay,
So the 500 will not be spent until they have raised what they've needed to, the full amount is raised, everything's in place.
Nothing starts till the project's fully funded, so that is correct, that's number one. Number two is that the difference, we have not had discussions about the mechanism or the timing of how the fundraising would happen and how we might be able to help. So again, We don't, it's one of those three where we don't have the agreement yet. But we need the $500,000 approval to add to the $350 and the $900 that we've gotten the grant for. In order to get to the point where we can have those discussions. So right now, our preliminary discussions with their board president and what we heard on a Zoom call where two of you participated was they're working on that. And all I can tell you is that I'm confident that working together we can get there, but we're not sure of what that timeline is gonna be.
I know they're actively seeking and they're
Yeah.
Yep, so I would just wanna ask this, I don't know how to ask it.
I think some of their funders, I think, are waiting to see what we do.
Can we ask, so can we ask you to make sure you come back to us with their funding mechanism and plan before we
You're gonna have to approve the agreement, yeah?
let any money go out the door? I just wanna make sure that, cause if there's different ways of funding it, we wanna make sure that we're okay with it and it's not gonna be any impact to us and any further outlay to us.
Is there a policy on in-budget expenditure approvals that this board has to do, or does it all have to go to you, Mark? What's our purchasing policy with that?
Once you appropriate it, we could spend it, but in this case, it can't be spent until we've got all the funding for the project. Unlike the Main Street Partnership ask where the 50 could be immediately dispersed and you're counting on me to disperse the other 50 only upon coming back to this board with approval of a broader contract. So ideally, we would get participation from board members on each of these three items, right? So maybe two each on SVAA, Main Street Partnership and Simsbury.
So my expectation would be, also just to start from my understanding, right? So the town owns this entire project and its obligation. So what we are discussing is what the funding mechanisms, will be from the state bond authorization, funding that's coming from the town, either in whatever variation, and then fundraising that SIMPAC will do on its own and then will also bring to the table. And any overages though still are the responsibility of the taxpayer. So it would be my expectation, if this gets approved, and I hope the board agrees, that they have to have that money in hand and raised. Or with bona fide gift pledges from verifiable sources. There's a way to do these kinds of things, so that money is in. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation considering the outlay that this community would be putting in for this project. And I also don't think that it's an unreasonable expectation for the organization that really wants this, and I hope that they can do it.
And I agree with you on that,
Okay.
that's a very good point. We talked about, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, CNR, we wanna look at any CNR items that people may, so I feel like some of this is dependent on if we have reserves available for some of these things, but does anybody have any suggested items that they were looking to remove from CNR?
I think Tom knows that I'm not in favor of the additional 100,000 for the pickleball courts. And at this time where it's tough we're looking for places to save money. I understand that it's been funded in the previous administration, but looking at almost $500,000 for a pickleball court in a not high traffic area for parks, when we could possibly do something that's cheaper to get us kind of a bridge down the road. I'm just not in favor of that.
Can I speak in support of it? So
Sure.
having been a part of this pickleball court approval to begin with, but we had some extra course through ARPA that we decided to allocate some of the funding to go towards this project. One, it met in the spirit of ARPA dollars of getting people outside and of course, I don't know if you've been to Terriffill Park, but Terriffill, we talk about DEI all the time. Terriffill is the most economically disadvantaged group. Their parks kind of last to get addressed. And this is an effort to get people, not only to get their park in better shape, but to get people there to eat out and just to make them feel a little more part of the community, so.
Sure, and I think that those are all great points. I just think in the time where we're trying to find some savings, that's an additional $100,000. It just seems like it's needed.
I would say well, it sounded like, Tom, you said you've gotten at least 2 estimates.
We had 2 estimates in the year we made the request. One was for just over 300 and the other was for 350. That was 2 fiscal years ago at this point going on. So we'll be into year 3 by the time we actually go out to bid next, hopefully December-ish.
Okay, and so the other option is so we fund it and it comes in less, then we keep the money in reserves, right? If we fund the 100 because that's your expectation of the current bid market, correct?
My guess is it's likely to come over 350.
Okay.
So the 100 we figured between that and the permit and what Tom Roy has said, the permitting work needed will cost us. That that extra 100,000 gives us the cushion to make sure we get this project done. We may only need 50,000 of it, we may need 75. I don't know that exact number. Again, it's the bid where the bid market is at that time. We're gonna try to hit it before do our project before the summer school projects get done, when there's competition to get those projects done. So hopefully we're in a favorable time. But yeah, any money that we don't use of that is just gonna kick back to wherever you've taken the money out of. So ideally, we're not in the business of trying to spend 100,000 if we don't have to. We'd much rather get it done for 350 or 360, but I know it's been a priority for the board. It was a priority for the last board. It's a priority for many of you, I know, and it's a priority for many in the community. And it goes to that whole park revitalization we've been talking about for years with the fixing up of the playground, the new pavilion. Hopefully this leads to if the trail ends up going through there, we get the parking improvements that needed to be down there. All of that kind of ties together to bring that, and Heather eloquently said it's kind of a distressed park. I mean, right now we have some eyesore asphalt tennis courts with a fence around it, that nobody can use. And we want something people can be proud of, and hopefully it gets, to Curtis's point, it draws more people there. That was the goal of this, is to draw more people to that area. More people in the area, less vandalism. More people in the area, they stop at the restaurants there or whatever other shops they may be in Terriffill. If they're coming from the south end of town to the north end of town to play pickleball, hopefully they're stopping somewhere along the way or stopping on the way back. It has the opportunity for weekend tournaments and that kind of thing with 6 courts there. If your question is, if you guys don't support the 100,000 and we go out to bid for a 6-court pickleball project and it comes out to be, again, 390, we don't have the extra funding.
You're gonna have to come to
The option is to either come back for supplemental, or we don't take 6, we look at 4. But then does 4 accomplish the goal that you were looking to do?
Yeah, and that was a good point. I was gonna make that point in that the Board of Finance they don't love supplemental appropriation, so if we appropriate the money now during the budget, which is kind of how they normally ask us to do it, it's there, that you guys don't have to come back for it. And we don't have to make a supplemental down the line, potentially hold things up. And I just wanted to bring up, to me, touching on what Heather said, the courts, it was really like a 3-prong approach for T-ville. That, we have the trail that we've been so focused on, we got the East Coast Greenway connection thanks to Tom Roy and Krog and that group. We have the planning study that we approved last year to do the mini charrette of the downtown area, and that was all kind of a holistic view for economic development actually down there, and there's a lot of people looking forward to it. So I'm happy with the cushion to make sure, I don't wanna call it a cushion, we're gonna use a lot of it, but just to make sure that there's no more delays, cause the other point is this project has been delayed over 2 years because of FEMA, like Homeland Security. And so we've been waiting for that to happen, and we're finally getting close to where there is a green light for that, and we should be able to move forward on that. So.
And it's mostly funded at this point.
It is funded, yeah. So.
And if it ends up where it doesn't work out, then it's back to the drawing board, probably with something more expensive at some point.
Yep, a splash pad.
Are we even in the FEMA zone?
Yeah.
Are we outside of it?
No, Tom can speak better about it than I could, but the building area of the park, right now the floodplain goes right out into the softball field, right? The floodway goes out to the softball field.
So right now,
Right now, it's
The old maps, the old maps.
They're changing the theme of flood zone mapping, and there's two different things. There's floodplain where the water's gonna go and be stored, and there's floodway where you think of it as water moving through the area. Right now, our tennis court, where the proposed pickleball court is in the floodway. The new mapping correctly moves the floodway back closer to the river because historically that area does not see that type of flooding.
But that's my point, so why are we held up on FEMA when it's
Because
technically
until the
reduction?
until the new maps go into effect, it is in the floodway.
I know the flood.
So we're waiting for the floodway to move so we can put the courts there.
Okay, now okay. So you're forward thinking, but at this point, you're premature.
Well, yeah, I
don't
mean,
even know what that
nobody
meant.
expected these maps to take 4 years either. I mean, it should have, these draft, right, they've been in place for 4 years, the draft maps, or thereabouts.
It's a process.
It shouldn't have taken this long, but it's the
It's like a
government,
tongue twitch.
so.
Still the appeal,
Okay.
it'd still be next year.
So
Go
we're
ahead.
we're on CNR. Does anybody have any other discussion items on CNR?
Yeah,
I do.
okay.
Okay.
The landscaping on Hannahurst, sorry, Tom. I'm just wondering if it's is it a nice to have? Is it a necessity? Can we move it out? If we could just maintain it this year and save the 60,000, and relook at what we wanna do maybe next year. That's it. I want them to look nice, I do. I do agree that there's something needs to be done with it, but if we have to find things to cut, I'm just wondering if that's the low hanging fruit.
Which one are you looking at? I'm sorry.
Under Public Works, the Iron Horse Landscaping, it's $60,000.
Oh, that's right, we talked about
Page,
that.
yeah.
Thank you.
180. I couldn't find it
Go
either.
with
So I
No, I don't argue at all.
Yeah.
Again, these are all tough choices and
Yeah.
we started off with some painful cuts, so I get it.
Right,
Um,
like it's like that or,
Yeah,
a vehicle,
no,
we want
and-
vehicle over,
No, the only thing that might be an interesting ask is if we're gonna push it out a year or two, could we put a small increase in that operational budget? So that we could, right now we outsource that to a landscaping company to do the maintenance, but perhaps we give them a little bit more to work on some of the invasives and to try to, make sure that we do a little heavier mulch and that kind of thing. Normally, something like that we would fund as we go into the spring with year-end money, but just a thought.
What is that you would need?
I would say an extra 4,000 or 5,000 would go a long way. I mean, it's a long stretch, but just to make sure we do an extra mulching.
$5,000.
Don't undersell it, right, Mark?
right? So then you're looking at a net $55,000 saving, that we're taking out of the budget.
Are you
Are you okay with that?
suggesting, say that
Sorry.
again, restate that.
So if we remove the proposed $60,000 from Iron Horse Landscaping, but in the operating budget, we would put $5,000 extra for the additional mulching to maintain, so we're having a net $55,000 savings overall.
Are we taking that out of both years? We're just taking it out completely, because it's a 2-year span. I mean, I know we don't have to do next year,
I
but
think we're pushing it out.
just
We're pushing
taking it
it
out. Okay, I'm in favor, do we have to vote on that? So I guess is there a unanimous consent that we, I guess we'll vote. I'm looking,
You
well,
want to make a motion or?
do you want, do you wanna make a
I
motion?
moved that we
Yeah, move it,
move it out, $5,000 to operating,
but move it out completely,
move it out,
not move it out into another year.
Well, we can move it out 2 years. Doesn't matter at that,
But we don't know if we wanna, do we
Yes,
wanna
I
do
just
it in the
remove
long
it.
run, I guess is the question, or we wanna keep considering that we're gonna do the landscaping on the,
$120,000 for a median? This just seems a little excessive.
well, you could go out, I'm joking, well, you also mentioned they could be grass,
We could switch
and they
over.
could just be grass.
That's $12,000
And
approximately.
and I will say that the motion's out, right? So I'm talking, am I in discussion talking?
Sure.
Was it seconded?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes,
What's the motion again?
Yeah, what is it? Read the motion again.
So what I understood the motion to be was that we were gonna move out the $60,000 in the Iron Horse landscaping item to FY 25-26 and FY 26-27 and increase some line item in the public works budget for maintenance by $5,000.
Am I allowed a friendly amendment?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was hers anyway.
yes,
I know.
I will allow a
Well, no, I don't know if it applies here, because I would actually just move it out.
Like to remove it.
remove it.
Remove it.
And we can relook at it in another year or two, like it can be reproposed in a year or two.
So I have another question to this amendment here, I don't know what the hell we're doing anymore, but if
I'm
we're
telling
doing
you
this
no.
band shell expansion, right, and it's supposed to be now this centerpiece and everything else, I don't wanna be short-sighted and not have it
Sure.
at least on a plan for discussion
Okay.
Correct.
and all the other pieces there, and it doesn't commit us to do it, but that's my thinking.
Okay.
But part of this, if
I was
I'm
gonna
not
mention
mistaken, is the pollinator pathway is a large driver
Yeah.
of this expenditure. And I mean, it's only my opinion, but we do have the riverbed.
Why do you hate the bees, Stephen?
It's not that I hate that, first of all, I'm allergic, so it is a little vindictive. But I just don't see the median being this huge pollinator pathway, it's only 4 feet wide.
Yep.
So 120,000 to me just seems disproportionate to the pollinator pathway we receive. So that, it's not that I hate the bees, it's that I hate the expenditure.
Yeah, I understand,
And
I'm
I
being silly.
Yeah, I see your point though, if you're gonna have this, we wanna have the median look beautiful, we don't want it to look like garbage as people are going to this new big, huge, expanded, right, but we're not gonna, the proposal for that is shovel ready next year.
Well, even that shovel ready next year, it's gonna take the whole winter to get
Right.
complete. It would be interesting to say, you know, do we wanna have this come together at the same time?
Right, that's what I was thinking, to push it out.
But what I would say is, certainly the island's right near the entryway. If we're able to get everything going at the Performing Arts Center, I think that would be a small supplemental appropriation if we wanted to do something at that point.
Right.
Cause it's a lot of stars have to align.
Yes,
I just one thing I wanna add about the pollinator thing. I know I've been exposed to it a little bit with the presentations and whatnot. It's kind of it's not about the total, I mean, it's a lot of islands down there, Steve. So it adds up. Every little bit helps. So the idea of the pollinator pathway, just like the library where they build the little beds, we're gonna do some little beds out here. It's about building those little bubbles up so that they do connect. So hence the pathway thing. And we're basically been mowing, we mow the fields down there. We mow, we're doing roadside mowing down there along the trail. So having, if you did have the pollinator plants or wildflowers in the islands, I mean, wildflowers, just if we did like the wildflowers we do at the dam at the golf course, relatively cheap. I'm not saying that's the best answer, but relatively cheap, and they just grow throughout the summer. They don't need a lot of water and they don't need, they just need a lot of sun. That makes a difference. It's better, my opinion, it's better than grass. I mean, some people may argue it's not as pretty as a nice cut lawn of mowed grass, but we're mowing everything down there. We're mowing roadside, we're mowing the fields. There's not a lot of those pollinator pathways. So that's what we would be building down there, if that's the whole idea of it. I'm sure there's people in town who can better explain it than I can, but that's my understanding is you want on the map, you wanna see these little bubbles and connecting, and that we kind of have that dead area down there to some extent, and that's why there was a goal to do that. And I understand if you don't want it right now and it's a big expense, but at some point, maybe that's something to think about going forward, whether it's planters or whatever, you just wanna keep growing those, and Simsbury's doing a great job and all the town facilities are doing a great job doing it. I think that's the idea. I just don't want everybody to think that it's not worthwhile to keep that thought about, keep the thought in your head.
So Diana's motion is on the table to move it out a year, so we're not paying anything this year. We're gonna pay it in the next 2 years, right?
Yes.
Wait, what?
Just want clarification.
So that's the motion
And $5,000 into Public
Appropriated
Works
from
operating.
Public Works,
to
yes.
cover this year.
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor,
Second, alright.
it was seconded. All those in favor to do that, say aye.
Aye.
That was easy.
After all.
And no one's opposed, cause that was 6 of
Tom, I have
us.
one more question for you.
Thanks, Tom.
I thought we were done with that.
Sounds like you, Tom.
We just voted on it.
That was a nice one more question.
About this?
About something else.
Oh, sure.
For the
Chair recognizes.
cause we
I didn't recognize you now.
No, you're
Yeah,
fine, you're
I'm
doing
supposed to
great.
recognize you, but that's
I
okay.
apologize. If we're doing the Performing Arts Center, we have for 25-26 about $85,000 in upgrades for the back. So there's like the fencing, and there's field electrical improvements. Will those go away?
I'm not sure which fencing project that is.
This is $25,000.
We completed a fencing project a few years ago. Do you know which one that is?
I don't know which one that is, but I'm thinking something different.
Sounds like you can remove it.
Yeah, there was
This year anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which fence, and I apologize, I'm not sure which fencing that project. We just did a big one down there a few years ago. I know they were maybe looking to take some, we bought some temporary fence that they have. Basically, you know, where most of the people go in from the circle garden beginning up toward the band shell, they may be wanting making that more permanent. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what that is. The electrical improvements, there are some electrical improvements that do need to be made there.
And this wouldn't, with the redo.
No, this would be, these electrical improvements go out toward the field, so you're not running, it's basically maybe underground conduit going to where they set up the control board out, you know, on the side of the rock wall, so that there's not a tripping hazard with the cords they run out there. It's those type of improvements, or moving it to where the food trucks are, so that they can have better electricity and not be running generators all day long.
Yeah,
Could you give me a page, Curtis, where you were
It's
saying?
182.
Thank you.
At the bottom of 182.
yeah.
It's right here.
I think we should just bury that into the,
Hide the what?
bury
These
the cost into
This
there.
next year,
No, kidding,
25,000.
just joking. I know I'm on TV and I shouldn't say jokes like that.
That's fine.
Any other discussion items on CNR?
So there weren't a lot of changes, you wanna
No,
just,
we're-
you're ratifying CNR with that one change or whatever.
We might have a couple discussion, it sounds like.
Well, just the zoning regulation update, technically it's out of the capital reserve fund. But I don't see why we can't bump that a year. It's, you know, $75,000, a reasonably high ticket item. The ordinances, albeit are in need of update, they're not that outdated, it hasn't been that long since we've revisited this. There have been several new things, like food trucks is one of them that they do wanna acknowledge. Housing obviously is a big driver, cannabis, truthfully, yes. I just think it just, you know, trying to be as frugal as we can this year, I don't see a big savings going over it this year versus kicking it down the road 12 months.
I would just say that it does provide clarity on the economic development front, so I just caution you that from that perspective, anything we can do,
Excellent count.
you know, to make sure that as we go out to recruit, retain businesses, investment, development, whatever, more clarity is what the developers want.
It's one of our few demand levers, I think.
It's really
Okay, I rescind my question.
really important to maintain that in
Okay,
Truthfully, that's why we asked the
Yeah,
question.
it's
One
good
option you
discussion.
sorry.
okay, go ahead.
You just freed up 60 grand because that Iron Horse landscaping was proposed to be paid for by the traditional payback. So that was a kind of a fixed number that you saved on that side, so you have some capacity in that funding mechanism if you wanna put that 60 towards that project instead.
Bank error in your favor.
Exactly.
Somebody's playing Monopoly.
Do not pass go.
Well, it's good, it's nice to have the little extra savings too.
Community chest.
It reduces your capital reserve.
Yeah, that's, I think the more we can reduce
Right.
is good, right, cause then that maybe helps the other
So
arguments.
so before we take a break, I think just to summarize, you've got potential cuts on the operating side that take you down below a 3% increase, so congratulations on that, good job, really good job. You've made, I won't say a minimal cut, but you've cut some CNR, which was funded by reserves, but still helpful. If it's a good time to take a break, we could discuss with staff what reserves are still left, and the third piece would be what you wanna fund in the CIP by use of reserves as opposed to bonding, if you want to have that discussion tonight. Or you could direct that we change things to unfunded to try to stay below the line, but we could take a break, let me circle with staff for a few minutes if that's okay.
Yeah, my own, can I just, my
Yeah.
concern is next year, the high, you know, if we get somewhere this year with the bond reserve structure. But I don't wanna
Yeah.
spend another 2 hours
No, I
thinking
mean,
about next year.
let's see what we can do
Okay.
to address that.
Do we have any restrictions after the budget is approved to change the funding mechanism if we have something else available?
Donate a couple. I'm sorry, making jokes now,
No,
sorry. I
like
didn't mean to
reserves
not-
versus bonding, like if
Right.
we
Yeah,
if we
that-
decide that we were gonna
I
fund it in
think
a
you
certain
can
way now
always decide not to bond.
and fund it another way.
I mean, you need
But
to,
we-
you need to give bonding authorization, obviously,
Yeah.
for the bonding, so you could just, if there's an
So
alternative.
based on knowing that, which I kind of was assuming, then I think that we could still get the number and all that, but we don't need to make all those individual decisions necessarily tonight if it's not gonna affect the levy.
Also, just trying to recall, so tonight, we're really just approving what goes to the Board of Finance, but we're not
Right.
approving what goes,
Yeah,
To the referendum.
yeah.
right?
Right.
We'll still come back
We're gonna do
to
this
us
all again.
after Board of Finance gives us guidance,
They're gonna go,
More guidance.
we're gonna get more red line,
That's what I thought.
thanks.
But it will be good to see how much we're bonding, because we were said not to bond anything, right? And how much we really are gonna bond. I think that's the question for the professionals.
Say that again?
We'll take a break.
Back, sorry, I'm punchy. So you guys went off to do some stuff.
Yes, we did.
What'd you do?
So we're trying to work down from capital reserves number, the number that you were provided before, 2.3, what we've used, where we are. And there's a comfort level with this board authorizing additional use of reserves up to about 830,000, give or take, where we would still feel we had a comfortable level. Obviously, and one of the things we discussed during the break was that, you know, this board votes the budget up to over to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance is then gonna make their recommendations, changes, and it comes back to this board. So in terms of clarity for the Board of Finance and for staff, it would be if your intent is to use more reserves, and that's your, you know, really the discussion for the next 20 minutes or so should be, what level of reserves are you comfortable with? Staff's recommendation is that you could spend another 830,000 and we would be okay with that.
From the end of this year.
Yeah,
How much more?
830,000.
Doesn't sound like very much.
He's willing to take that in small payments.
So let me ask, so if Amy or Mark or
Yeah.
if we find 830 in the CIP, we're just talking CIP right now, right?
And move it from, we're just CIP, you're
C.
talking about moving it from bonding to reserves.
Okay, so let me go back to, so and we could find eight
Give or
thirty,
take.
right? Which
Yeah.
already we picked three things maybe that are reserves.
Yeah.
Right? How much bonding are we doing this year? What will we be bonding for this year? About 3 million, because there was a
That impacts the 25 budget, or that you are approving in 25 that will impact the 26 budget?
well, I guess that's a few questions, right?
Well, answer the first one first is important. So any bonding that would impact the 24-25 budget?
So that's already committed, so that's the second half of Latimer, so that's 12 million. And then anything that you all approve is gonna impact the fiscal year 26 budget.
So don't we have an issue in the fiscal year 26 budget already for debt service?
I mean, we do just because of the Latimer issuance. But again, that's part of that overall conversation that I wanna have with the Board of Finance, because we're talking about the out years and the 4 different options in the debt service. Like, I literally need like 4 hours with them just to go through each of the options. And get their guidance on which direction they wanna go. But there is a plan in my mind where we're getting down that debt service in the out years already. I just need their blessing.
Okay, so you're saying if we use 830 of reserves, I'm gonna just make some guesses here. Like, let's say we use 500 for what was it we were talking about?
I think you
The
thought
bridge.
about
The bridge, right? Because that was technically supposed to be cash funded last year and got moved to bonding, and we already did the bond. We did the bond notes for that last year, right? Because we approved it in last year's budget. The 1.9.
Right, but I think this is the overage, right?
Yeah, the overage. So if we instead of putting that out to bond, let's say we used reserves for that.
Do we have to bond for it because that was the original funding source?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No, mix and match funding sources. Okay.
Say that again?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
no,
you can say it out
they
loud.
answered it.
I answered it earlier, sorry.
So that is an option. I guess I don't see the value, but if we use reserves, then we know that it's not gonna probably get cut. I guess that's the
Correct.
logic, which I just dawned on me, right?
Right, so the priority for this board, switch to reserves if you wanna be.
If you wanna keep it. So are we in agreement to include the Flower Bridge
I think it's a project that's a long-term, impact, it's got historical, value and all the things that you'd wanna do when you have something that's extra and the reserves are at this point from what we're talking about extra. And this is what we've been left over because of appropriate spending from this past year. And so we're not taking away from other reserves, we're just decreasing the amount we're adding to reserves.
Okay. Did we include the 150 for the pool?
Or the splash pad.
So is that out of the is the 830 before or after that?
After.
Oh, after that, so it's after
The splash
Flower
pad,
Bridge.
splash pad is in.
Is done. Tom, you can leave, I guess.
No, I want Tom's,
He's not,
I know.
he's got the kids with the balloons outside, he's.
so wait, is the Flower Bridge inclusive of that already? So now we
No,
reduced,
we just added
you just hit it.
the 500.
so we just reduced it to 350.
830 minus 500. We have 330 left.
In district network infrastructure.
Oh yeah, he has to.
It's the exact amount.
Let's make it, but there's 30 left though, 30. We could use that for a CNR project, can't we?
So we have 350.
You could do crack filling at the Simsbury Farms tennis courts.
For the splash pad.
Oh, wait, say that again?
Got turned down last
Isn't
year.
the splash pad out of the 830?
Yeah, it's already gone.
So that's my point though.
We have 330 left.
No, the splash pad is, it was.
It was already taken
It's
out.
already
To
included.
the 830.
Wait, do we have
We included
830 or
it.
850?
Oh, okay.
You've got 330 left.
Thank you, I got it.
Amy, was it 830 or 850?
830.
Okay.
We have 330 left. Okay, so Heather put out there the BOE, where is that one?
It's just 20 grand over.
No, the network security.
I'm sorry.
The
Oh, it's
network.
350?
Yeah.
It'll be over.
But so it's only over from the surplus or whatever for this year, there's still reserves that could be applied.
Well,
So
we
from-
could still use a little more of reserves. We
That's
could
right.
use the 20,000 of reserves. So if we do I'm trying to find it on here, Board of Ed
The
It's
district,
160.
network,
Page 160
350.
printed.
350.
But then if,
but is
I
that,
guess, is there anything else that we don't want cut?
right, I was gonna say,
From the Public Works, and Thomas said the 275 rooftop units are critical to,
I would just say to Amy's point, the conversations that she'll have with the Board of Finance that are, they're complex, not just about the one issue we talked about earlier, but the potential impact of debt services in those four options are likely, highly likely, in my view, to result in favorable something. We just can't get out in front of the Board of Finance, and we need that opportunity to get this budget to them to make those pitches to the appropriate board. But, I'm pretty confident that you're gonna be okay. Some capital projects in the out years need to be marked unfunded so as to not go over that line, but I think you're gonna be okay.
so
pushed out the 250.
so let's say we do the network thing and we spend 850K, right?
Perfect.
But do you think there's something else that they may cut and they,
I think that it's coming back to this board anyway for final action that would be within their guidance, so I think we don't need to necessarily get it exactly square there.
cause my point is, is that if they feel that network security is something that they'd prioritize and bond anyway, and there's something else that they may cut from ours that we could put in reserve, that's what I was, yeah.
Well, we still, Amy, what's left after the 830, what is the balance of reserves? It's not like there's nothing there.
That's 1.5 million.
So there's still potential to use more of they may come back and say use more of those reserves and not bond for stuff.
Right, so after our conversations,
Yeah.
it's either gonna be use more or it's gonna be like you've used enough, we're just going to go back to bonding depending on which direction they
Okay,
go.
but the board, I think our board would feel like before anything gets cut, we would have the opportunity to look back at reserves to use additional reserve funding in case there was something critical that was gonna, right? Did that make sense?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think
it's
it
at their discretion, they
Okay.
don't typically pick the projects for you,
Yeah,
they
okay.
typically give you $1 to
But they
come
might
back
say
and
use
cut and set
another-
the priority.
Yeah, use another 500,000 in reserves and not bond, or another million, or cut 5 project.
Right.
Okay. Okay, is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, I think we're comfortable with that.
So I think we've got, if I just summarize, I think we've got CNR with a minor change, we've got capital with as presented with that move of the two things you just indicated now being paid from reserves. operating, just in general terms, the cuts that staff is working to get into the system are gonna take us to under 3%. You approved 3 of the 4 proposed new positions, but cut the social worker as part of the 6 things that saved us $700,000. You know, from where I sit, I think we did an excellent job. The cuts actually on the operating side are a little steeper than even the guidance is. So I'm just wondering if we could revisit briefly the cut of the HR restructuring. And I'd ask any member if they've got any interest in making a motion to reconsider that.
I'll make the motion to reconsider it.
For discussion, I'll second it, Mark. I'm waiting for your discussion.
I'm not the chair, it's gotta go through Wendy. I just asked if there
We
were.
voted on it,
I'd
so
love to hear Mark's pitch, here.
So
okay, Mark, give us your pitch again. Sorry.
I have a question.
So I wanna
Mark's
reframe,
giving
but
us
go
a
ahead.
pitch.
Go ahead, no, you pitch and then I'll ask my question.
What I wanna do is I don't wanna go back over what I've already said, but I wanna try to do a slightly better job and fine tune it, right? Cause we've got a little static in here. This division, and it's currently just a division within the town manager's office, touches every single aspect of town operations. It is, and you know, I didn't wanna put too fine a point on it before because I don't wanna impugn anybody's work, you know, the incumbent is doing a fantastic job. But HR is the single point of failure for the entire organization. It's compliance, it's employee safety, it's employee training, it's professional development, it's recruitment, it's retention, it's collective bargaining negotiations. It impacts every budget line in the budget that you've looked at. It is the number one priority of the positions that we're asking. The others were all tied for a close second. Anybody who would like to take a walk and look at the actual and get the picture, the actual physical stress that unit in town government is under, I beg you, please reconsider. The 2 things go together. Get the incumbent elevated so that we can implement technology that we already have. We're paying for Munis HR, a module in the Munis network that we can't even implement because we don't have the resources to do it. This should have been brought to the board's attention years ago. If it's not done in this budget cycle, we've got a whole year of chaos. So I beg you to reconsider that in view of the fact that the impact on operations is not significant. The mill rate now, assuming our colleagues at the Board of Ed do their piece, and I hope they are, I think they are, will be within the guidance from the Board of Finance. And I just hope that you didn't, you know, pick that one because it was in any particular order. But you need to get HR out of the town manager's office. It's not good governance to have everybody think that when they wanna come in and make a complaint about their supervisor, they gotta walk into the town manager's office. It doesn't make any sense. So, thank you for the opportunity to make that pitch. I won't raise it again. I really am grateful that you've given me the opportunity to.
Tom, did you wanna add something?
Please.
So
give me some help.
Especially seeing the past year, sitting in that office with, it's been one person doing HR. That past year, that has been one of the biggest, if that person leaves, as Mark touched the entire organization. That's been one of the biggest fears of that person leaves, this town is down an HR person, an HR department for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to find the right person. And that's slowing that down. Yeah, the deputy town manager role touches some of it, but even when that current HR employee was out for a week, a couple years ago, there was 4 new hire orientations to do, there was MOUs to do, there was recruitment on top of the current meetings already being done. So the ability to have 2 people dedicated to that role would allow, if you have a person leave, the entire town HR doesn't just fall to the ground. And it allows for training, the SHRM training certification, that only benefits the town, and there's just not enough time to do that with the current HR coordinator.
Thanks, Tom. Lastly, I'd say that there's an element for charter review here, because when the town management form of government was selected, They didn't tweak this, and you still have personnel sub, and you still have the perception that the town manager is the personnel director. Frankly, that needs to be reviewed as part of charter review, which is also on your list of goals and objectives to take another look at. I think that the transfer in the form of government didn't check all of those boxes. So there's a lot of things in the codes and we can talk more about that later, but I would also just say in deference to our DPW commissioner who's here, that somebody asked me today on the staff, said, why did he give up that 100,000 on the paving? Because and I'll just share with you, give you full transparency, the discussion in my office was because that's on the operating side, it's next to impossible that we'll get it back next year, even though Tom made the comment that, we'll be asking for it back. But we all know in the administration of local government that once you give up something, whether it's a position or $100,000 in paving on a recurring basis, that to go back to a board and ask for it again in a second year doesn't often happen. Somebody asked me, why do you think he did that? And I don't wanna speak for him, but I will. It's because every single employee in the organization wants us to get this HR director, every single one.
That's what I was gonna ask. We have
Please.
2 department heads right here right now. And if I can be so bold to
Please.
ask them what you feel the impact would be if he's, they're saying it's needed and it touches every part of the organization. Is there an impact for you that you feel is justified for this position?
I mean, I couldn't say it better than what Mark did. I was ready to clap. That was worthy of the Oscar speech right there. I mean, fantastic. I mean, you were literally taking the everything.
Tom, you got the splash pad.
So and certainly
Cut
Tom
my-
Fitzgerald's been as close to it as anybody over the last year. That position supports every department. I mean, if when you don't approve that, you're taking away something from us. It feels like we're being taken away. Again, safety, trainings, professional development, everything that these guys said, it's exactly true. Response and if somebody gets hurt, we need to be able to get a hold of somebody to let them know and to coordinate the care of that employee. It's the return to work memos and checklists that he has to put together. If he's just doing that for each individual employee, who's doing the rest of the work? And then come May and June, from my perspective, I've got 100 seasonals coming in that I have to dump in the town manager's office. It's a lot of work, and that's on top of all the other full-time stuff that they're doing. And the library's got seasonal, Tom's got seasonals. Just imagine what May and June is like down there. And then you come at the end of the summer, all of those people are leaving, and whatever issues we may have with them. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of grievances. I was speaking with a couple of the members before. We just went through this big OSHA inspection, 10 years, Town of Simsbury, Public Works, Parks and Sewer, all went through that. A lot of the things that you're gonna end up hearing about that we were cited for were record keeping, it was trainings, safety manuals, things like that. Those are things that HR normally would be able to support us with. With only one person, that person can't do that in a one-person department. And Tom said it best. If something happens to Eric, God forbid, or he leaves, it's disaster for us, and particularly if it happens at a bad time of year too. I mean, just to get that person up and on, you may take 8 weeks to get somebody in here, it's gonna take them 3 months to get used to the whole system here, and to find somebody who's gonna wanna take that job in a one-person department for a town this size, good luck. We're having a hard time recruiting for a lot of other positions. That one's just gonna be twice as hard. So I've said my piece. I think it's that when I saw that on the list as proposed positions, everybody I know in my peer group here, department heads, was like, thank God, we really need that position. And then to sit here Saturday and see it go, not getting, a great shot and it looked like it was gonna be cut, and then tonight here get cut. It was like a shot to the heart, to be honest with you, so.
So can I add to that? So we're in this discussion, right? So, this was something that we talked about over the last few years, kind of, the need to kind of move that out of the town manager's office. Wasn't supported before, but it sounds like, that's would be a good direction for everybody to go in. A couple questions is, do we have to, if we were to move this in, I still think we keep the separation of the promotion, the HR director piece out of the budget, because we can do that internally. Like we don't know what that's comparable salaries are at this point in time.
We pulled, to get this proposed range for both positions, we pulled at least 5 of our towns that are gonna be in our GovHR survey. So we already did that comparable
Could I
survey.
offer
That
a
would
compromise?
have been helpful.
It now just occurred to me, but I hate to pull the contingency thing here one more time, but you know, the budget, the fiscal year doesn't start till July 1.
Right.
If you approve this and we can get it through the Board of Finance, we won't implement it and the money can go back to savings unless personnel sub signs in and we answer the chair's questions about the salaries.
Well, it's
and
about the
any other
director, more the promotion director.
Whatever it is that you want,
Just-
we will answer those questions, every one of them.
I would want to revisit all the new hires if this is what we're going to do, because I'm just really uncomfortable in this climate to hire 4 new employees. I think it just has an effect for the years to next year as well, it's getting overhead.
So I was also gonna say, thank you for saying that, is you know, I would ask the question, this is your top priority, so would you be willing, and Amy's here, like how, put you on the spot, could the town admin specialist, how much of a impact would that be on town staff to not have that position funded this year? You know, if we were gonna pick, cause if we sent 4 positions to the Board of Finance, I don't know if they're all gonna pass. If we make at least an attempt here to eliminate one and go down to 3 positions that we're sending, which is still a lot. I know you guys have made a lot of cuts and just deprioritize that, because we still can bring that back to a vote. You know, I guess the question is though, if there's a chance that it would get all of them will get passed, which I don't think that will happen. I don't know.
We're under a 3. Nobody thought we'd be under 3.
But we're still at a what's our taxing, I mean, I get the percentage, but I still have to go back to what's the tax increase to each person.
I understand.
With what we have in there, right, so and then what's the tax increase if we take out the supervisor?
Could you do the illustration for adding in the HR rules on the individual taxpayer impact part? I think that would be helpful for this group to hear that difference in number, because I agree actually in the entire discussion, and I think we should review all 4 positions maybe in this conversation, but the actual impact is still low. I think we need to be cautious of that incremental growth and not trying to discount that, but I think the actual impact is smaller than we might think.
Yeah, I think they said it was, you know, each position is a
$8 or something, I think.
$17.
We're working on
$14.
$14.
To the average, to each person though, so to.
Is there any way that a 0.5 FTE would be a meeting point? You know, part-time employee?
For the supervisor, I mean not the supervisor.
The generalist.
The generalist, oh, I thought you meant for the other one.
We already went down we
No,
tried
we went
to
down that.
part-time
I
and
know, but I'm going back.
Now, actually, I think I
Going back
did pose that same question for that position.
For recruitment of part-times, and we certainly advertise some of them. For a position like that, it will probably be open for a good amount of time before you find the right person. Cause for looking for part-time, if you're looking to get to that 17 hours to avoid the benefits, you have to find the right person that one has the 17 hours available kind of in that working day and enough time to assist with what we need. And 2, the person with the right background. So it would save money, but it would probably be open longer than it is filled, and then you're just kind of
That's
not.
no offense, but that's not the best argument for me.
I think the
Just say
argument
that it'll take longer to find the candidate, cause there are people in the workforce that are looking to downshift, you know, most commonly when you have a child, one of the parents, not to say it, will downshift a little bit, but still wanna be involved in the workforce. So there are people that fall into that category. It's just you know, and if we found out that the generalist and the HR guy can't get by with 1.5 FTEs, then we go to 2 instead of going from 1 and doubling to 2. It's just an escalation, it's a possible way to get there and onboard them.
So I just wanna reiterate, so if at where we are right now, if we add back in the generalist full, it's a $14 increase per taxpayer.
With the promotion,
What $14 increase to what? Like what if the Board of Finance was to approve what's presented right now, What is that tax increase percentage? It's over 6, correct?
It's 6.39.
What were we targeting for a tax increase percentage? If you take out, if you take out the Board of Ed target, where's the tax percentage increase? Is it
Even if I take out the Board of Ed target.
Yeah, you
if
really
the board-
can't.
if
This
the-
already has the Board of Ed at their target.
So if the Board of Ed is at their 4.5 target,
4.3, yeah.
4.3, then
You guys are at 2.39. I mean,
Even with that salary, yeah.
Yes.
so you
We've
guys
cut
are,
to the
I
bone.
mean, honestly, let me do something super quick. If you wanna get down to a 5, you're cutting another 1.3 million. I mean, at some point, like, the Board of Finance has to look at the reserves, the revenues, and kind of take a look at those cuts and see what they can do. If you want to prioritize these positions, we could have it go to the Board of Finance, we could look at those reserves, we can look at our revenues, and then if they want you to come back and cut more, obviously that's their prerogative. But if these positions are important to you, then send it along and see what they can do with reserves.
One more question, does this include the increased investment interest income, the 500? Of course it does.
So I think that we went through all the positions in pretty good depth, and we found that they were needed, and one wasn't, we didn't get consensus on that one, but now we've gotten a case that makes it work, or that we need it, it's actually a need. It's not, I don't know that the number 4 versus the number 3 is reason, if we determine a need, it's more about fulfilling that need versus the number of adding. That's my.
That's the whole point of the guidance, not to interrupt you, Heather, but the whole point of the guidance is to give us guidance. If we came in, if guidance is to cut 550 and we cut 740, the idea being that, do we now say that guidance doesn't matter because nice job, everybody, I agree, we need to always work to get that mill rate increase as low as possible. But internal stakeholders have a big ask here, and that's the ask that's coming from the internal stakeholders, not the taxpayers, but the employees. They are the customers of the human resources function. And it's to say that the town manager can handle it is I just can't, even with that, I can't.
we had last year, the Board of Finance, actually, they came back after we presented the budget and said you need to choose between a couple of positions, so that could happen.
That could happen again.
I still haven't heard, other than the extension of an applicant arriving, the justification for one full FTE versus a full 5. Is that the only reason we're going with a full-time employee instead of part-time?
I would make one in my own organization, especially a role that touches HR, personnel records, just having a trustworthy, person in that role and all those things, not that a part-time person can't be, but by having access to and touching all those records, you wanna both appropriately compensate and give them the right incentive to do a good job in that role. It's just too close to it. I think you could do a part-time with a lot of different roles, even higher compensated ones, but the closer they are to the money and the people's, personal information, I think we wanna be a little bit cautious. I know where you're trying to go on savings though, and I agree with that path.
Yeah, and I think the what I'm hearing from the actual workload justifies a full-time position. Not to mention, I agree with you, the confidentiality factor of everything that they're working with.
So I don't, I get the need for a town hall. I mean, I really, I get it, I've seen it.
You were a yes vote.
I know, I am, I'm not voting against that.
You're losing them, Mark, they're dropping like flies.
No, I am still a yes vote. I was not a yes vote for the shared position, right? And at one point I was looking at that versus the records clerk. Like I was gonna choose between one of those and then we ended up, so I'm not totally sold on that administrative position. I know that all of these departments need people. So that's hard to say no to the people that you see once a week maybe, right? But then, and I know it's only $14, but I'm still thinking of the people that are out there who depend on us to kind of try to hold the line here. And we do wanna support town staff. I mean, we try to do our best here, but we also have people out in the public that will just see it as a tax increase. And will just push back on that, and it is, to some people, it is an impact. I mean, $14 a year, I guess, is really $1 if an escrow, your payment a month, right? So that to most people doesn't make a difference. When I say it like that, it really doesn't sound like a lot, but yeah, so that's where I am. Like I said, I don't know if there's any compromise on that you know, I don't wanna hurt Trish or Colleen or Francine or your department by not staffing that, cause that's customer facing also, right? Customer facing permits and all that kind of stuff. So
How much was the number? How much is the estimated compensation, including benefits for this position?
for the generalist or for the
For the HR generalist,
It's 92 something?
I think, yeah, what was there in 200 than that?
Reduce premiums for employee safety.
The generalist is 65,000 plus benefits for a total of 110.
You know,
Oh, 110,
back to that earlier point very quickly, I have, even though, and I'm no expert on this, but I have every confidence that Amy and our staff is gonna be able to get some further agreement from the Board of Finance on some of the things that we've said, she's gonna have those conversations, so if it's a close call in your mind, I'd say please pass it forward. I understand, Heather, your point that maybe the Board of Finance cuts, or maybe they come back and they say choose. But in good faith, we put everything we had. I don't have anything in my pocket. If I did, I'd pull it out and say, okay, I got one more. But, you know, I laid it all out. It's I don't have anything else.
That's a good question.
But where there is something else is the Board of Finance. Because they hold the levers for Amy's conversation, the CNR, you know, the use of reserves. I don't have those. I can't do any more than I've
So I
done.
was like, do we need to find
So
110?
there's a lot of positions this year, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's is it the most in recent memory
Yeah.
adding or?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the largest number of positions we got?
I have a spreadsheet.
at one time.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Four a couple of years ago.
I don't remember where I saved the spreadsheet every
Two
time.
police officers, two positions.
2 police officers.
You know offhand?
I remember the
So
two
while
police
we're
officers.
doing that, and I think that is illustrative while we try to talk to the public about our justification here, with all the increases. Are there more increases, Mark? Is this what you need to manage the town for the next couple of years? Are we gonna have to come back to this again with additional increase, additional staff adds? Or can we say that this is what you need for the next couple of years as best as you can anticipate, you know, saving a vacancy or something else that we need to replace?
To the best of my knowledge, that's probably true. I think that exclusive of replacing positions where we have retirements or departures or unexpected departures. Yeah, I certainly don't foresee ever needing to ask for 4 positions again in any of the years that I'm here. It is a large ask. It's almost to the point where, put the money aside, the trepidation that this board's having is because it's 4. It isn't whether it's 480,000 or 520,000. It becomes the ask in it of itself is 4. I think that your question is the hardest one I've had to answer since I've been here. And I will tell you honestly, I think yes, I would be extremely reluctant to come back to the board a year from now and add things. But put it a different way. If we cut and still come in with a $2 million surplus at the end of next year, I'll be having a different conversation with this board. Because how much money are you putting into fund balance every year or into cash reserves while you're raising the mill rate?
Well, your Board of Finance chair is gonna say we budgeted too high.
Well, again, I'm respectful of that board. You know, I've gotta go in front of that board with you and sell this. It's a very difficult sell. But they've got triggers and levers that they can pull to make this possible. If I don't ask for it, it's on us. We don't ask for it. That's why you're hearing from staff that it's so critical. They can't even believe we got this far. But that's why it wasn't asked for before, because the assessment was made by previous folks that it didn't stand a snowball's chance you know what? Or a different position was a different priority at the time. So I've made the best pitch I can. I think if it's, it was 4-2 before. If it's 3-3, it goes to the Board of Finance. That's all I'm asking for is send it to the Board of Finance.
So I think that a discussion about an adjustment, right, that right sizes the organization is a legitimate one to have, even if it costs a lot. But I just wouldn't wanna see the hockey stick or that curve have, something that we're gonna see next year. It's only 2 next year. We've approved 4. So and it's not just because it's numbers, it's not just because it's FTEs, it's because of the actual direct cost to the individual taxpayer. Tom, did you have a number that you?
Yeah, so we've been tracking a spreadsheet since fiscal year 16, and the highest was 6 positions in 22-23.
Oh.
We're playing budget history back here. I don't know what I won.
They weren't public works positions, so Tom's has good memory.
Was it the
We won
police, wasn't that
5,000
the police year? We just,
You added an IT specialist, accreditation specialist in the police, our youth and family social worker, our property appraiser, and 2 patrol officers. And then last year you added a patrol officer with a sergeant upgrade and a parks maintainer.
But your grand list growth was 13% back when you did that. So I know it's particularly difficult and I think Heather has said this and you did when we talked, I think you're making these decisions against 0 grand list growth and $1.5 million in lost revenue and all those things. So it is harder for this board to do it. Achieving 4 is okay. It's a big deal and we appreciate that.
If we had the motor vehicle tax back.
If we didn't lose the $1.5 million for motor vehicle, we might not be here. But
Right.
I think that as I've walked the halls of town hall, you if you approve this and we can get it through the Board of Finance, you will have had the biggest impact on the organization. HR as we've talked about, but also the admin that you're giving is a shared position. You're not just helping assessment, do some tax, it's 3 areas that are all asking for help and you've checked those boxes. The auto mechanic, we only asked for a half year and the questions were good. Well, why not a full year? The difference is probably another $12 and we, so we're really not, we're doing everything we possibly can to earn your support for something that is very important to the team.
okay, so what was the motion that was made?
The motion, but hold on, Mark had conceded a July 1st hire date that I think should be part of the motion. Cause that changes.
Well, it would be a July 1 hire and we're happy to
Fiscal
go,
year.
yeah.
So that's fiscal year.
Cause that technically, if we're gonna use the public works,
Well, they're,
approach is a 0.5 FTE, which gets me where I want.
well, no, the
No, but no,
public
that's a
works is
fiscal
not until the fall, in the winter.
Yeah, fiscal, yeah, it's
And there it goes, no, I'm just kidding.
But you're
That's not the right term.
right, because
Okay.
it's July 1 and so, cause Wendy did have questions that were
So I was like,
unanswered.
whoa.
I wanna make sure that I do my best to make sure the questions are answered. Even if you approve it and even if it passes, nobody's doing anything till July 1.
Well, I think it's clear to me, Mark, that there's a lot of things you could advocate for in this budget and that you're advocating to support the staff, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so what was the motion?
The motion that Curtis made, I think, was to add it.
Reconsider.
To reconsider,
Okay, so is there
Again,
a
second.
Doing it anyways again?
Well, if you could do it now, just so we could
Let's
do
just,
the numbers.
let's just do it, so it's on the motion, all those in favor of,
Well, just a point of clarity,
Yeah, what?
is there either an opportunity for a friendly amendment to reconsider all the positions and reduce? Or are we just gonna add all 4 in and we're just gonna move forward with all 4?
that's a good question, okay, I thought we just overanalyzed that to, what would you, do we wanna reconsider
Does
the
anybody wanna do
position?
that? I'm putting that
No,
on the
I
table.
think we just.
Okay, so we move all
Because this was the
4,
only point of
it's
contention.
Curtis's original motion, sorry to confuse the point, I just
Yeah.
thought it was important to say.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to move it to Board of
Okay,
Finance and see
okay.
what happens.
Can we vote?
Okay, so all those in favor say aye,
Aye.
Thank
all
you.
those opposed say nay,
We're all counting on you, Mark.
I'm counting on you too.
What?
and Amy, we're counting
Not
on
an
Amy
easy sell
too.
to your colleagues across the street at
Just
the
checking our mail.
Board of Finance.
yeah, if we hadn't lost the car tax, that's our 1.3 million right there.
I know, but it's gone.
I know it is gone.
We should have kept the mill rate
Talk
up
to
at,
Melissa and Lisa about that.
I
we
know.
should have kept the
Good job,
mill
guys.
rate up at
They're gonna work on
higher.
Motions,
motions for
10-minute
you,
break.
and we'll put them in front of you.
Thank you.
Leaving. Okay, we're back in regular
Go
session.
back into.
So we're ready to make the fiscal year 24-25 budget resolutions. I'm gonna have to read all of these to make it official, correct? You have to read everything.
Yes.
Can I ask a question before we go there? I don't see the decrease in the median in here. Wasn't that
Why
$60,000?
don't I give you a quick overview about each
Okay.
of them just quickly? So that first motion, that is the operating budget only. So that is just the changes you made on the operating side. One of the items you did was you increased the public works budget by 5,000
Correct.
because you cut the CNR, which is further down.
Okay,
So the next few motions are self-explanatory. At the bottom of page 1 is the CNR motion. You're approving the total amount of expenditures and then how they're funded. So the cut from the median's baked into that.
Big time, you just don't specifically say out, we took out this, it's just not in there anymore.
Right. Because with CNR, you don't technically approve every project, you just approve sort of the roll up.
Yeah.
However, on page 2, that's the capital. The first motion is those items that you have to affirmatively add to the plan because they were not on there previously. After that, you're approving all of the year 1 projects. And then on the final page is an extra special 824 referral to the planning commission. That's a requirement through 824 is the municipal improvements statute. Basically for the planning commission to look at the projects and just say, yes, we agree, these are in accordance with our POCD. So that's just another formality at the very bottom.
Alright, we trust you, Melissa, correct?
Yes.
I read it and I agree.
I trust Kevin.
Move effective, I'm going now. Move effective March 11th, 2024 to approve the Board of Selectmen 24-25 operating budget in the amount of $28,740,000 and $677 to include the following changes from the town manager's proposed budget. $100,000 increase contingency for vacancy rate, operating transfers. Increase the contingency, right? $100,000 decrease in paving, highway facilities and programs, $200,000 decrease Board of Selectmen public agency support, SBAA funding. Why is that SBAA, I was thinking, Main Street, I'm sorry. $205,749 decrease in Simsbury Farms contribution for operating transfers, $100,000 eliminate the youth and family social worker position, $25,000 decrease in road safety, highway facilities and programs, $5,000 increase to public works for Iron Horse medians.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, move effective March 11th, 24 to approve the water pollution control 24-25 operating budget in the amount of $4,808,496, including Avon and Granby CWF share.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Move effective March 11th, 2024 to approve the residential property 24-25 operating budget in the amount of $55,827.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Move effective March 11th to approve the Simsbury Parks and Rec Fund 24-25 operating budget in the amount of $2,884,828.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You guys gotta be quicker. Move effective March 11th, 24 to approve the debt service 24-25 operating budget in the amount of $8,915,868.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Move effective March 11th, 2024 to approve the, what?
I got Heather on that one.
Heather,
Just randomly pick numbers. Move effective March 11th, 24 to approve the capital non-recurring plan for 24-25 in the amount of 2425794, including 714492 to be funded by the general fund via the 5-year payback method. 284337 to be funded by the general fund, 709385 to be funded by the capital reserve fund, 91580 to be funded by the town aid road fund, $250K to be funded by the sewer use fund, $42,000 from project savings, $21,500 from the Eno Trust Fund, $217,500 Simsbury Farms fund balance, $95,000 from the golf equipment
So
fund.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Move effective March 11th, 2024 to add the following new project to the capital improvement plan for 24-25 in accordance with Charter Section 803B. The Terriffill Connection East Coast Greenway Gap Closure for $450,000. Old Drake Hill Road Flower Bridge Rehabilitation Supplemental for 2646000. The Town Hall rooftop units for $275,000. The sewer replacement Pine Hill Supplemental for $200,000.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Move effective March 11, 24 to approve the capital improvement program to include the following projects in 24-25 with total funding of $11,369,501 for 24-25. Guess I gotta read each one. Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center Bandshell Edition for 2782881, recommended funding. Do we have to read the recommended funding too? I guess I will. Capital Reserve, yeah.
Yes.
Just tell me, yes or no?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I remember I had to read everything before, so capital reserve fund, grants, donations, project savings. Memorial pool redesign, $150,000 cash. Highway pavement management, $1.6 million bonds, grants and cash. Public works truck replacement and plow, $266,220 cash. Sidewalk reconstruction, $223,400 in bonds. Terriffill Connection East Coast Greenway gap closure, $450,000 in grants, project savings. Old Drake Hill Road Flower Bridge rehabilitation supplemental, $2,646, prior authorizations in cash. Town Hall rooftop units for $275,000, bonds. Multiple site and safety improvements, Town Hall, $460,000 bonds. Barn and facility repairs, Wolcott Road, $275,000 bonds. Dam evaluation repairs, the Stoddard Dam breach, $171,000 bonds. Sewer replacement, Pine Hill supplemental, $200,000 sewer use fund. District network infrastructure, $350,000 cash. Simsbury High School auditorium and amphitheater improvements, $400,000 in bonds. Tooten Hills replacement roof V3, V4, $1.120 million bonds.
So moved.
All those in favor?
So just a point of clarification, we had discussed making changes to that auditorium and amphitheater, and we didn't do those in the end, is that right? I just recall.
We didn't do them.
Okay, thank you.
We
I just remember the discussion, I couldn't remember where we landed.
Yeah, we never got back, circle back to that, so oops.
Well, I mean, this is
We
the
may
moment.
circle back to it.
Oh,
But okay, that's fine.
BOF's getting it next.
It's moved and seconded.
okay, it's done.
We have to vote.
We have to call
Oh,
the
I didn't, I thought I already
That's my
checked it
fault.
already. Okay,
Do you
so
wanna
do we wanna
change?
vote on that? Does anybody want a discussion on that?
We just had that.
Oh, we were okay with it? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
They Board of Ed lucked out there. Move effective March 11th, 24 to refer the following capital projects to the Planning Commission in accordance with CGS section 8-24. Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center Bandshell Edition, Memorial Pool redesign, Highway pavement management, Public Works truck replacement and plow. Sidewalk reconstruction, Terriffill Connection East Coast Greenway gap closure, Old Drake Hill Flower Bridge rehabilitation supplemental, Town Hall rooftop units, municipal site and safety improvements in Town Hall, barn and facility repairs Wolcott Road, dam evaluation repairs Stoddard Dam breach, sewer replacement Pine Hill supplemental, district network infrastructure, Simsbury High School auditorium and amphitheater improvements, and the Tooten Hills replacement roof V3, V4.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With our regards to George.
What?
Right.
With who? Okay,
This
oh,
is
to
all going
George,
his
George.
department.
Okay, so with that,
Shit.
I am going to, I just wanna say thank you to you guys for all your hard work and for sticking with us for all that, to Mark. And I do wanna
Good job,
say,
guys. Well done.
I wanna say that I really enjoyed this budget with this team and I thought we did a good job. We spent a lot of money, but there was a lot of cuts and hopefully that
Good
some
job.
of it goes through. So with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.